God, thank you for the opportunity to come together to do county business today. We ask you to give the commissioners wisdom as they make decisions that affect all of us. Pray to watch over our county employees and protect us and serve the county. Pray.
Get started, let David explain the,
Okay, so we sent out a notice of special meeting. We had it on the website, sent it to the newspapers, and then I've got one person on the list right now to send notices to. The special meeting states that we'll meet at 9 o'clock today at the annex. And the meeting has been called to discuss the proposed zoning and subdivision regulations, to review budget proposals, and to take any necessary action on these issues. So we are limited to those things since it's a special meeting. We can't get into anything else. It will just be budgets and the regulations.
and also we're gonna start off with a few of the county budgets before we get into the discussion of the planning and zoning, when Mr. Kopp gets here. And we do have our other commissioner, Jason Hightower, on the phone here, so he's listening. He can hear and he can talk, so just let everybody know. So, this time we'll go ahead and call up, Christie.
Morning, Christy Schmitz, Register of Deeds. You've got the email from David on my budget request. I also have some hard copies.
I've got it right here on my computer. Thank you.
So, can we start off with any questions or?
You know how I've been kind of on it, so if you could just explain like what your office does, what you do.
Sure.
How you're,
I'm really excited right now. Chris Martin has got a new device for my office because we do have all of the books in digital format that people can actually come in and access on the computer. However, they're not all completely back indexed towards the land and the parties involved and such. But which is really exciting because some of the books are in pretty poor shape, and that's why I've asked Chris for this device, because instead of having to put these books that don't come apart up on the copy machine, we can now use this device to take a picture and import that image directly into our software. And speaking of our software, we've had a lot of visitors in our office. I've had one fella from Alabama several times that has commented that he works all over the country and the software system that we're using in our Register of Deeds office is the best he's ever used. So I'm really happy about that. So, and I'm also excited that it's paid for now, and now I'm only having to keep up with the maintenance and replication fees. So
what do you gotta do with all those books that you have in the safe and stuff like that?
I'm directed by the statute to keep them there. They are a permanent record. So, and there are some that are in need of repair. Other than that, we're the information center. We get the requests from abstractors, realtors, banks, attorneys, and the public for all sorts of information and documents. And also, we're there to assist ancestry searches and preservation of records, collection of fees, and recording and filing of documents. So this year, I had in my budget for 2023 a capital outlay for some shelving units, some shelving add-ons, and a plaque cabinet that had been lost. And I'm not going to purchase those this year, so I'm giving that back, and hopefully maybe I can get that cabinet next year. The company does have me on their list. It does take a while to build one of those, so they'll be ready to build it whenever I say go.
You're just transferring the 8,900 over into next year. So.
Correct.
Okay.
I do have one purchase order from the 2022 budget of $5,000, which is going towards the software maintenance fees.
How many employees do you have in your office?
I have one full-time, Debbie Snyder, and two part-time. The part-timers do nothing but back index and answer the phone. I'm very thankful for them. Speaking of employees, Debbie and I both completed our Register of Deeds continuing education with K-State this year, so we both have certifications. And that's the reason I've put in a step increase for Debbie.
Do you see any significant changes within your office in the next few years that we need to start thinking about?
The only thing I see, Danny, is we're kind of at the mercy of the economy. So if people aren't buying houses and getting mortgages, that's where our fee allocation comes from. And if there's a decrease in recording of documents, that would be the only change I would see.
Christy, how did the removal of the mortgage registration tax affect your office?
It originally balanced out a bit, but the banks are figuring out how to do 3-page mortgages, so the fees have gone down a bit. Instead of getting the 20-page mortgages, we're getting 3-pagers, so that kind of cuts into our allocation.
All your revenues go into the general fund, don't they? You don't have a separate fund for you?
We have a separate fund for technology and for Heritage Trust. The Heritage Trust is paid in by the treasurer to the state, and the state, does all that. But I think that's in part of my. Yeah, it's administered. That fund is administered by the State Historical Society, and which Linn County has been a recipient a couple times of that fund. So it is a good fund. We've had a school, I think the one at Prescott, and then of course the courthouse. We've received state historical funds for preservation of those buildings.
Like just like credits that you can utilize on, or what do you mean?
So for every page of every document that's recorded in the office, the state gets $1. The State Historical Society gets $1, and then the counties can apply for grants for their historical buildings, and it comes out of that fund. The state administers that.
So each one of our historical societies could apply for that grant, or is it something just for the?
Correct. And everyone can apply for it.
And what all can that grant cover?
The grant, well, it's up to the state. Like I said, it's administered by them.
Kind of like the preservation.
Yes, it goes towards the historical buildings and landmarks.
Okay. So I know, like Missouri, I don't know what to do in Kansas. I know Missouri's doing a lot of work with preservation, so that's kind of where that money goes then.
Yeah. Yes. And then we collect the technology fund for the treasurer, the clerk, and the register of deeds. And we use the technology fund for our computers and software and technological services.
You just implemented some public computers in your office that the public can use, right?
Correct. We've always had 2 stations that the public can come in and use in our office. And I would invite everyone to come in and just take a look around and see what we have and what we do.
Is there anything you need from us? Do you feel like we're what we need to do to help you?
I'd just like for you to come visit and see what we do, so you can understand, why we ask for the budget we ask for.
Jason, you got any more questions? Do you need any more questions?
I don't have any.
I do not.
Can you state?
I'll make a motion that we approve the Register of Deeds general fund budget in the amount of $150,892.51 tentatively.
I'll second it.
Motion made second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
You ready?
Morning, Commissioners. Sean West, Public Works Administrator. Going over the road budget. The road department's broken down into two main road shops, Mound City, Lacine, which are responsible for road maintenance, repair, replacement, as well as bridge and culvert maintenance, repair and replacement in their areas. And asphalt is located at Pleasanton, which is responsible for all hard surface roadways in the county, and the sign department located in the Mound City location in its separate building at the shop area. They're responsible for all the signage in the county. North-south dividing line is at 1,000, beginning from the East County line at 1,000, going over to 69 Highway. From there, 1,100 to 1,150 to 7 Highway to 1,700, and on to 1077 over to 1,800 to the West County line. Linn County has 200 miles of hard surface roadways and 727 miles of gravel and 34 miles of dirt roadway, totaling 960 miles of roadway to maintenance. In 2022, we completed 22 miles of chip and seal, 5 miles of overlay and striping. Hauled and laid 37,950 tons of rock or aggregate material. Each of our road crews performed ditch maintenance, tree removal, snow and ice removal, and special projects such as building removal or demolition, in addition to their other duties. We also have taken advantage of grant programs to improve bridges and roadways when available. In 2022, Botkin Road Bridge was built using one of these programs, and in 2023, Hellsbend is scheduled to let using a similar program. These programs allow us to use state and federal dollars to improve local infrastructure with small matching fund amounts from the county, saving local taxpayers the cost of funding the entire project. These projects are targeted specific to roadways and bridges that may not be the highest priority at the time, but the priority fit the parameters of the grant, such as high-risk roadways and critical fracture bridges. The road department has consistently improved in its personnel numbers, and I anticipate filling to 100% sometime this year. The budget, even with salary increases, should come down this year due to assistance from the clerk's office, David, particularly with assisting in finding the accurate manning numbers and salary estimates. The equipment in this department is aging and will take a number of years to turn around, but with good maintenance program and assistance from the shop foremans, we should be able to get ahead of it over time. The equipment plan that I've given you or given to you will be reviewed with the foremans and mechanics at least once, more likely twice a year, and sent to you as updates when they're available. The reason for changes will be changing priorities and failures and reductions, equipment failures, reductions, and special project needs. Recently in the equipment area, you approved going over the expected budget for special equipment, which allowed us to purchase 2 track hose instead of 2 backhoes. Allowing us to make these purchases will give us more flexibility with ditching projects, limb clearing, culvert installation, while replacing 4 pieces of equipment, not just 2. Last year on the administrative side, you allowed us to fill a assistant public works administrator's position with Jessica Hightower. This gave us greater opportunity to prepare for task and for grant opportunities and allow us more time administratively to be put towards project supervision. This year, you approved a part-time public works clerk position, which will not only allow Joyce more flexibility for time off, but will also allow her to put more time towards administrative tasks and duties. If you'd like me to stop there, I can have the road foreman speak to you, or I could go on to the sign department and asphalt.
That's whatever you want to do, just as much detail as you can get of why we do what we do. That's all I want.
The sign department, we have one employee working out of the sign department located on the property in the Mound City shop. 2 vehicles are assigned, 1 bucket truck and another smaller pickup. The employee, with approximately 8 years of experience, is trained in the Mudco, LTAP, and KRLVR standards, the manual Uniform Traffic Code, Local Traffic Assistant Program, Kansas Rural Low Volume Roads Program. Year-to-date material cost in this area, $15,770.13, and in 2022, material cost as we replace signs in the county reached $63,465.46. We've replaced street signs from the South County line to 1200 Road beginning in 2022. These costs also include the replacement of older damaged control signs, informational signs, and markers. These signs are required to be replaced on a cycle and must be reflective. The signs reduce risk to the public and liability to the county. Kevin also assists communities in our county that do not have employees certified in these areas. The program allows for safe identification of control signs on traffic ways, locating and identifying roadways for emergency responders, the public, and delivery services, among others. The employee certifications allow for recommendations of control signs without engineering studies, which also allow us to do so without extra cost to the county. When not replacing signs, the employees assisting in clearing brush, limbs, grass, other obstructions, preventing clear line of sight of these signs. Other duties assigned to the employee are sewer district maintenance, CDL trainer, and assisting other departments with aerial maintenance using the bucket trucks such as IT, maintenance, park, and sewer. The CDL program that Kevin also maintains and runs has changed over the last year. Federal requirements mandated agencies be set up as a CDL trainer program site and record all training on a web-based platform. Kevin provides the instructional parts of the program, and Jessica and I are the administrators. Kevin instructs new employees in the classroom training, allowing them to get permitted, and then behind the wheel instruction, which prepares them for their over-the-road testing. Since the beginning of this new program, not to include the past instruction, we've completed with 3 new employees gaining their CDLs through this program. Kevin also assists the road department in mowing, dust control, and transportation department manpower needs when they have a shortage on drivers. The asphalt department, asphalt has 2 full-time employees, both experienced operators and able to operate the unique equipment used during the process of repairing, replacing, and laying asphalt and chip and seal. One of the major components of this program is oil, as different types are used depending on the project. To aid in the storage of these products and to come into compliance with changing regulations, we've added 2 new storage tanks to the Pleasanton shop, which should be permitted and online this week. When it comes to the decisions of what to overlay, Todd uses multiple ways. He looks at the amount of traffic and how much of the traffic is heavy traffic, such as trucks. He looks for swags, puddles in the road surface during rainstorms to see which roads have the most amount. And he looks at the condition of the existing asphalt to see if there is any excessive cracking. Paving is usually has a 5 to 7 year lifespan if it's applied correctly and not abused by weather or traffic. We've planned for 5.5 miles of overlay in the budget each year as it allows for it. The only thing that really impacts this is oil, material, and fuel prices, which we have overlaid one roadway this year ourselves, which was funded by capital outlay and did not impact the budget that we're requesting, and that was Radcliffe Road. Chip and seal is usually on a 3-year rotation and done completely in-house. We pull manpower from the road shops to complete these projects. Chip and seal usually last 3 to 5 years on average, depending on the damage from traffic, snowplows, and weather. We used to try to cover 40 plus miles a year, but with the increasing prices, we've been, or have had to cut the amount to half that in the past few years. We currently have 210 miles of paved roadway in the county, and a large portion of that is out of maintenance rotation. Todd typically tries to plan out at least 3 years ahead. This gives us time to focus on repairing any culverts and shoulders which may be problematic. We have Wall Street from 7 Highway almost to Ingram scheduled this year. We will chip and seal around the lacing area this year as well. In 2024, we have 1095 to 152, or 1095 south of 152 to 1650 scheduled for overlay, and around Mound City for chip and seal. In 2025, we would like to finish Wall Street from Ingram to 1077, and we will be chipping and sealing around the Blue Mound area. Patching is subject to the budget. We don't typically have a set amount we try to achieve, but due to price fluctuation of oils and rock, when we make our own, the price of hot mix from our vendor in 2023, we've currently have 50 loads of hot mix budgeted. As you see on the overall, these departments are all laid under the umbrella of road and bridge. If you look at the overall budget request for 2024, I believe you'll find it to be 51,000 below last year's request, and you'll see that we're still requesting to roll over funds into our special equipment to maintain that ongoing balance to improve and upgrade our equipment that we spoke about that's rather aged and some of it needing repaired or replaced in the near future. Do you have any questions for me?
Are you allowed them guys to talk or what?
Any questions you have for them, I'll ask each one of them to quickly come up and recap anything about their department.
And what I've had multiple calls on what we did out there at Wall Street or cleaning off the side of the road. And could Todd come up and explain that, or somebody, and just explain it to the public? That's the way we clean the shoulders off, you know.
Certainly.
For no reason.
Certainly. Todd, do you want to start out?
Good morning, Commissioners. Generally, when we have the edges of the roads peeled, we don't quite do it as aggressively as what happened on Wall Street. We typically try to peel off whatever high spots are along the edge of the road so the asphalt or chip seal or whatever project we're trying to do actually can get out to the edge of the surface. That way we're not oiling grass or putting chips on dirt or anything like that. And typically we don't have too much to worry about when we do this, because generally when we push snow in the winter, we peel the edges of the road with the snow plows. Unfortunately, we haven't had that happen this year. The last couple of years, we haven't had anything that's really amounted to it. So, but every project we do, we always peel ahead of time, regardless of what the project is. It just was a little more aggressive than what we've done in the past. And I didn't realize it was going to be that way until I got calls about it. And then I seen Harry.
I had multiple.
Yeah, and then I seen Harry send a guy out to clean it up and get it kind of straightened up. So, but typically we only peel off whatever the first inch and a half or so that's sticking above the road is.
What do you typically do with the material you peel off?
The dirt, we just launch it back into the ditch, because normally you're only peeling just a small amount of dirt right off the edge of the road.
Most of it's grass.
Yeah, it's mostly grass. You might occasionally get the high spot of dirt, but yeah, it's just mostly grass that goes back in. And then we come along with a broom if we're chip sealing and we broom the edges off and get them swept. And if it's going to be an overlay project like Kilo or any of those, they typically have a broom that they sweep the edges off before they go ahead.
What's the best time of year to do your projects?
Summer. So about May to September.
So we pull grader operators and all that stuff to go to kind of work on your project. How do you guys coordinate that?
Generally, when I try to do that, I try to take excess guys. I prefer having dump truck drivers be my equipment operators. So if I have rollers that need to be done, I try to typically take dump truck drivers because a grader operator can go from dump truck to grader and back and forth, whereas you can't take a dump truck driver and throw him into a grader to do the job unless he's been trained. So I try to lean more towards that, but sometimes I'll have to take a grader operator, and I like to have it to where if I take a grader operator, he's not off of his area for any more than about a week. So that way he only is away from his road for a week, and then I can get another grader operator to come in from the same shop, and I can try to rotate them that way. That way I'm not keeping anybody from their area for any extended amount of time.
So when you pull guys over to help you, like, are we having like guys with CDLs hold stop signs and things like that, or how does that work?
Typically, we'll use the arms if we're going to do traffic. That only requires one person to do it. If we're going to do chip seal, which we do multiple miles, I'll use part-time mower guys to try to help with that. That way I'm not using the CDL guys to hold stop signs or anything of that nature. And then, like I said, when it comes to the rolling with my chip seal or my steel wheel, I typically try to pull truck drivers, but if we don't have enough, then yeah, we'll have to have a grader guy come out for, a couple days here, a couple days there.
So this overlay right here around the block, I'm not against asphalt. I know you think I am. I don't understand it well enough to.
Well, I'll be glad to.
I just don't understand why we pull people out of the graders, which there's a lot of gravel roads.
We don't have enough manpower to run an entire crew the way it needs just by dump trucks. We don't have enough secondary people that are in a shop without taking grader people.
So does asphalt take priority over everything, or is that how do you guys?
Well, it doesn't typically take priority over everything, but a gravel road, if it's bladed, can go a week or two without having to have constant maintenance. A gravel road, if bladed and just traveled, unless you're getting great big holes or you're getting great big swags, a gravel road can hold up for about a week. And typically we're doing projects that go a week here, a week there, or maybe 3 days. And then we have to move to a new area and it takes us a couple days to set up. So we're not doing it every week in that sense.
So my deal is I'm a restoration guy. And I don't believe I'm putting paint on a rotted wall. I don't understand why we're going to be doing ditches and I don't understand why we don't have a ditch crew out there making sure we're getting all those ditches completely perfect. I mean, our rock budget is huge. Our ditches are non-existent in some places. I know you guys have been trying hardcore. How is asphalt more important than ditches? I guess is what I'm asking. I mean, is it? And I'm not.
Well, it's not typically more important in that sense, other than a blade. Like I said, a blade man or a grader operator, as I was over in Blue Mound, a grader man would have enough time to put a ditch in if they see one that's necessary. I was on asphalt with John Byington, and I would be there for 2 months straight. I would have to come back and fix my area every year. And that's something that I learned that I didn't like. So that's why I try to make it to where if I take a grader guy, I'm only taking him for a week or so. And within a week, it's not going to make a detrimental difference to his area. He has more than enough time to go back out and fix ditches and blade roads and fix culverts and anything like that. And then I will rotate to someone else. So I'm not really pulling enough manpower from one area to jeopardize any major repairs or anything to the road surface.
So when we asked. Go ahead, Jason.
Do you think that the new track hose, the wheel or rubber track hose, are going to allow us to more efficiently clean out ditches going forward?
I would like to hope so. I would believe it should be.
We won't have.
I mean, that way we're not just blading it over to the other side for it to wash back in and and everything. That way, if we're actually using the correct bucket and scooping out those ditches, we're gonna keep them together a lot better than what we have in the past.
Yeah, we won't have to throw as much material on back slopes and try to hide and get rid of. We can load it in trucks and truck it off and put it in our stockpiles that we keep around the county. So you won't have the dirt where we've cleaned the ditch with a blade and we throw it on the back slope. We can actually load it because that dirt on the back slope will eventually end right back up in the bottom of your ditch.
Then tear everybody's mowers up too.
Yeah. We'll be able to actually load it up and haul it off.
Also, I think there's some mandated deal on our hard surface roads from one point to another point, and
Like connecting.
people got travel.
Can you
Well,
explain?
according to what I was told when I worked with John Byington, our hard surface roads have to exist every so many miles for 911. And they have to be maintained to a level to where 911 can travel down them safely and at a high rate of speed.
Are you talking like a connecting road between
Yeah,
major?
so like Wall Street being a connecting road and 1077, we have to have the connecting roads like that. So when it comes to the repairs of that, getting rid of the swags and trying to maintain them and everything else like that, that's where I would say it takes more precedence in that. But as far as saying it's any more important than maintaining the gravels, it's not. Everybody lives on all the roads and everybody uses them.
And then your outer roads that are kind of gave to us by the highway, I guess is that how that works?
Yeah.
We take like out there at Prescott or up there by Lacine. Now you're mandated to overlay those every so often, correct? Or how's that work?
I've been looking into it and I can't find anybody that can give me a solid answer on that. I've been told that because they're blacktop, we have to maintain them at blacktop because of dust control for the highway. But if you go up into Miami County, they've got a couple of roads that are gravel right along 69 highway. So we've been maintaining them as blacktop roads, chip seal, patching. But Tucker Road, I've had multiple problems with that road. The underlayment on it has completely cracked so bad that my asphalt will not stick to it in some spots. It just sloughs off.
So what's that going to do for us in the future?
On that one, I'm hoping to find an answer from someone that can tell me, yes, you can take it back to gravel. And I'd like to take what is the bad portion of that road back to gravel because the original 69 highway that exists is still good. And I can overlay on top of that without any fear. So, but Valley, Vale, Thomas Road, those have all held up really well.
I got a few phone calls away, like down there at Prescott, for instance. Our entire county was working on that road, and there's only one house that no one really lives in. When all the gravel roads are, I mean, he was pretty pissed. I explained the best I could, but
Well, on Thomas Road, it had a pretty significant hole that had started in the middle of the road. And I can't put gravel into a blacktop road as a patch, so I have to patch it back with material that we have, which is hot mix or cold mix if we make it. So on a road like that, I have to show it the same kind of attention as I do any of our other major hard surface roads. And that takes me having a crew to do it because I still have to spray my tackle oil and I still have to have my trucks to truck it in and my paver to put it down and anything of that nature.
so on this block right here, we went out for bids. We asked you to give us a bid. We asked other companies, and the other companies came in cheaper. Would it not make sense to you just to sub everything out and then you just do the bare minimum type asphalt stuff, or how do you feel about that?
Well, that's the thing is like this year with luck, hot mix came in cheap, but last year the hot mix for us to purchase it was over $100 a ton. It's $70 a ton this year. So the price might fluctuate up, might fluctuate down. For what we got quoted last year to this year, Bettis told us it was $100,000 difference to do the same distance of mile. So it would be cheaper for them to do it still just because we have to buy the asphalt from them at their price and they're laying it at that price. So if we tried to do that, you're going to burn through the budget of what we have and it would still put us right where we're at now. And no company's going to want to come in and do 200 foot here, 300 foot there. So that's why we're set up the way we are. They come in and do a big chunk of it for us, a 5 mile chunk, and then we go around and do all the patching. But even when we do patching, I try to make it as minimal as possible for trucks. I try to keep the trucks down to a minimum, and then I've got myself and two other guys on my paver, and then I have a roller man. And that's
Do any of those guys have to go classes or anything, or do they just, you just kind of just
the only ones that I have to have classes for is traffic control. So generally, I have to have somebody that's gone to traffic control to,
like have a competent person?
yeah.
What about your equipment? I mean, what's the life of your equipment? Are we gonna, next 5 years, are you gonna be spending a couple $100,000 on a piece of equipment, or is it?
I don't foresee that. Our chipper and distributor, and the only piece of equipment that we have that is old, I would say per se, is the paver. It's a 97, but it's still in great condition. My steel wheel roller might need replaced eventually. And I would like to get something that's a little bigger than what I've got now, just because it would hit the surface a little better and get rid of the ruts a little easier. But as for now and in probably 5 years, that might be the only piece of equipment that I would have to replace.
So I know you said the other day, if we're gonna do it in-house, I'd like to do it as best as we could, and I know that you'd mentioned we don't mill anything because you don't have the equipment, you just lay it on top, and it makes it, thicker. Do you have any plans on to get a milling machine to make that? I mean, is that the best way to do it, or?
I've been looking at the self-propelled, self-loading milling machines, so that way, and they're used, and I found them anywhere from $70,000 up to the prices, sky's the limit. But I found some pretty good ones that I thought would be low hours, Road Tech or Ingersoll or any of those. They're generally running about $70,000. And I think that would be something that would be worthwhile having, because if we wanted to collect the millings to use on later projects, we would have it. And we could actually take our road to the actual pitch that they need to be, and it would actually take them down to the depth that we need to restart at.
That's how it should be done?
Yeah, that's how it should be done if we're going to do our roads properly, because every year that we overlay, we just keep making our roads taller and narrower. And it makes our front slopes a lot sharper.
Which does that create divots by pushing material out?
Yeah.
What is that going to require from a labor standpoint?
Well, if it is any different, I don't foresee it being any different than when we're paving, because we'll have to have the trucks to haul the material off, but there shouldn't be much more than a 3 or 4 man crew that runs that piece of equipment. So what I'm running now for paving, I should be able to do for milling, and I would like to find someone that can train us properly on it and be able to do it right, and that way we can make it as efficient as possible.
How long does it take it to mill that off?
Well, if I can get it done, I could see us doing, I know they can mill out 3 miles a day better than them can.
Is that a big standalone machine? Is that what you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about, is something like that. So when we go out to do a project, we can just set our pitch and our grade and mill, and it'll cut the road to the pitch we need. And when we set up our paver, we can just pave at that same thickness. We don't have to worry about ups and downs and fluctuations. We can just set our paver at the thickness we want, and we can kind of go.
How's the rock for the chip and seal this year? Does it look okay?
I had it tested, and Cadmus tested out to where we're going to be, it's a double screened 1/2 inch chip, and it comes back at a 0.4 sharp, which it's pretty high, but it's not dirty. They said it's not a dirty rock. And we had the loader operator scoop out of the center, so he moved a couple of big buckets, and then we took it from there.
I think if we're gonna continue to keep it in-house, I think we should do the operation right. So I'd, maybe next year after, just kind of start figuring a plan. That's just my opinion, but, on milling or whatnot. And, I know I've been vocal about it, and it's nothing against you.
Oh no, I'm willing to talk to you anytime you want to
So,
talk about
I
it.
just
I
need
mean, it's more involved. Like he said, I've got 200 miles of road, and the cost of material to do anything I do is 5 times what it costs for a load of gravel per ton. So my budget is cut by 5 every time I go to do something.
So right now, you're just kind of trying to keep up with what we have. You're not trying
Right.
you don't have any plan.
I can't get ahead because all I can do is maintain. I don't have enough money right now to do what needs to be done, because the price has gone so high that maintaining is all I can do.
Is there anything in your operation that you feel could run better if we did something different for you? Or, what do you?
No, I'm actually, we're doing pretty good. I mean, everything's been running pretty smooth, and all I want to do is get them tanks certified. That's all I want. So I got somewhere to store my oil. That's all I'm
The
wanting.
ones that we just got installed?
Yeah.
Or-
That's all we're waiting on this week. Sean finally heard back. They're supposed to certify us this month, or this week, actually.
So you can't dump into them until they're certified?
Yep. So,
And all that stuff, we're up to, I know that was like a major item. We didn't know how far we were behind on everything there. Is everything good? I mean, is it,
everything's good right now. If we get certified this week, I can switch over to chip seal, and I'll get that done, and then we're gonna go back to patching. So once I get done with chip seal, I can go and finish all the patches I've got laid out, and then we're gonna switch over to doing crack seal again. Because that's typically what we do in the fall.
you guys got any questions?
I don't have any more.
Jason?
I'm good.
All right. I guess the next guy,
All right, well, thank you.
unless you have anything for us.
Oh, no, I'm fine.
Go ahead.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Kevin Amers, Signs, Traffic Control.
Can you just explain your importance of the sign, whatnot? A lot of people I don't think they understand we have a sign program, so.
Sure. In the United States and the world over, most countries have adopted MUTCD, the governing body of signs and manual of uniform traffic control. For road design signs, in the United States, Alaska and Missouri were the holdouts, but I'm not sure that's true anymore. But while Kansas signed and the other states had signed this agreement, that made it mandatory that we put up certain signs. It made it mandatory that we have certain signs in our road design. And it made it mandatory that we have to maintain those signs for reflectivity. And all in all, that's done for traffic safety, to cut down on traffic accidents and lives. And I'm sure a lot of you can think back about 4 years ago when you go through the curves all over Linn County. We didn't have these yellow things with arrows pointing you, guiding you through them. Well, that helps you to decide your turn. And it helps our law enforcement the most, because when they've really got to cook through there, that helps guide the angle of they kind of represent together. You know how sharp you're going to go. And road safety is something that, we're forced to do. It's not a if we want to. We have shoulds and we have shalls. And the best way that is explained to me is if you do everything that you shall is mandatory, and the things that say should, when you get drug into court, you will say, I should have done that. And every attorney has a book now, and lawsuits do happen. So,
if we go do it like a resolution to put a stop sign in, you get to do a study ahead of time, with like the clearance on each side.
Right.
And it's pretty in depth, huh?
sight distance is the major thing there, and then how many feet do you have before you hit that stop sign?
So we can't just go throw a stop sign.
No, no, it's all based on sight distance. I know I heard somebody one time say, well, you put it on a east-west or a north-south road. Well, that's got nothing to do with it, not even on state highways or any design. Everything's based off of sight distance. And sight distance is based off, therefore, speed, how you control things in that area. Everything is based really truly on sight distance.
So say there's a wreck and the sign gets taken out, and I think, Kevin, does he get with you and you get the county get reimbursed? How does that work? Insurance, or do you have to apply for it, or how does that work?
The insurance companies get with Sean, and I think Sean and David.
Actually, what happens, I get a notification from the sheriff's department on any damage to any road and bridge infrastructure or signs they've got electronic. I get an email about, I'll get with the guys, have them look at it. If the repair is due to an automobile accident and there's cost to the county, then I'll get back with the sheriff's department, find the insurance company involved in the incident, and send over the bill to them. So, and I still have, I think, 2 still sitting on my desk that I'm trying to work out with insurance companies. But we do have a notification system that comes through when any damage occurs. So we can try to recoup as much as we can.
Is there anything else you want to add to it?
You know, yeah, we got all the shoulds done. I mean, we were kind of lacking behind years ago when we found out we didn't really even know about the MUTCD deal here, and now we're all caught up. We worked like heck to get it done, and now we're in a maintaining mode. Like this year's street signs, and they really need it. And usually when I'm popping up street signs, unless it's a newer stop sign, it's going to get new stop sign too.
So like if Todd's doing doing a project somewhere, do you kind of step in there and make sure the road has all its signs and everything like that? Or how do you,
Well, I would, if it's some special design that we have to detour traffic, yes. But if it's a straight one, we've all been to school and we're all certified to set up signs for that.
gotcha.
But if it's a detour, then it falls in my lap.
Is there anything you need from us to make your operation run better, or you think we're doing good, or anything you want to change, or we need to be doing? And
Man, we kind of made it through the worst part. I mean, honestly, now it's maintaining. The shelf life, like Sean told you guys, could be 10 or 15 years based on what the sign looks like as far as reflectivity. And we made it through the worst, and it's kind of scary times in the beginning, but not now.
so is there like any special like equipment fund or anything we should be putting money in for future sign usage or anything like that? I mean, or is there a fund that goes to his department to help fund that, or do we just?
Not directly for signs. We've got a special machinery fund that we can use for equipment for anything in the road and bridge department.
Isn't that good for signs?
And then we've got the special road and bridge that we can use on projects for roads or bridges. So, I mean, I think we've got some money set aside that could go toward things that Kevin needs.
Good. Jason, any questions? Jim?
I don't own the signs.
All right. Mike, you guys want to mention anything or talk about your department or what we could do better? I mean,
No, I do want to mention that, I appreciate, the flexibility, allowing us to go out and do our job. I know it's been a couple years, we were doing a lot of stuff that didn't pertain to road and bridge. And that's my main thing is I appreciate you allowing us to just do our job, take care of the roads the best that we see fit and take care of any issues that come along.
you don't want to paint trailers.
No, I don't want to paint trailers. No, nor buildings, but, I don't mind pouring concrete.
Well, I feel that you guys, the roads are getting better. I mean, I think we've got a long ways to go, but I think there's the roads, the ditches, and with the track hose, I hope that's gonna help our ditch situation.
I think it will. I mean, 'cause like I told you guys before, when we was looking at getting them, I've got ditches up there that are usually always full of water just because of all the duck hunting clubs that are flooding ground, and it makes it hard to take care of anything, so.
And I
Get the water off the road, the roads will stay solid better.
And I don't bring you or ask Sean to bring you guys in here I just want everybody to understand what you guys do behind the scenes. I'm asked the questions because I don't know. I mean, I can have an opinion, but until you tell me how it rolls, I don't know. I can't make a good decision here. So, and I know Todd, I beat up him a lot, and it's not, I just don't understand the program. And, I just want to know how the importance of it.
Well, I would like to point out that Mike and Harry do a great job at what they do, but for everyone's understanding, there are times, and Mike just had a couple incidents where we call in our on-call engineers to work with them so that the plans you see and the repairs you see, these aren't just Mike's opinion, Harry's opinion of the best thing to do about it. When it gets to a certain point, which this is not daily repair, that it needs to be reviewed with an engineer so that we don't do damage that'll cause us future harm to our program or infrastructure, that we are using those engineers that you pay for and to put them in the program so that we make sure those repairs going forward fit the bill and will pass inspection.
It don't give us liability for something that, if something does happen, we've got engineers signs off on it.
And I asked that you guys, like Todd, if your operation, you think you can run it better, I would love to hear plans, come in here and visit with us and, if it makes your job easier, it's gonna make my job easier. So very open minded. I'd love to hear, if you think it could run
Help
operating.
us in the long run with that is if I had somebody to control the actual depth of my asphalt fog maps.
I don't even
And
know what
the
that
machine
means.
we've got right now, nobody has the automatics anymore because it's such an outdated.
Yeah, it's so outdated. You can't
So-
find the automatics to lay down a.
Right, so
The flat
we have
surface.
depth gauge
We're
rods that we
constantly-
use. And as long as we keep it at that depth and we know we're there, we know we're at what we've measured our rod. So we run 1.5 inch cap. So we've got a rod that we touch down and that's what we run 1.5 inch. But anywhere there's a swag or a divot or anything like, we're putting on, yeah. That's the only thing that's the problem with our department. I mean, we run a level amount, but we can't say, yeah, we're running 1.5 inch true, or we're running 2 inches true. Just because of the way the automatics would work.
So do you have a long-term plan to replace that piece of machinery or what?
Yeah, I'm hoping within the next decade to get something that's a little newer, more track. I'd rather have a track instead of a tire machine. But for right now, it's barely got over 1,000 hours. It was pretty much brand new when John Byington got it. So there's nothing wrong with it mechanically or electronically. It runs great. So I don't see the purpose of, or the point of replacing it since
Right.
we can get it within, centimeters of being the depth that we want.
How often do we use them bottom dump trailers, the rock trailers?
The rock trailers?
The belly dump? The belly
I,
dumps?
I don't use it very often at all. I mean,
Do-
unless
So really, we don't use it,
that's why there's not one down there at the South Shop because me and Harry didn't want one.
I've seen it set at your shop. It's set at your shop for a while. I don't even think
Yeah.
it's moved for a while.
Yeah,
Well, we
no.
don't have bullet.
Yeah, you gotta have a semi that'll pull it and,
But should we be thinking about getting
should we
rid of
be
it?
getting rid of it?
huh?
Do we need to get rid of it?
I don't know. I mean, because it does come handy in certain spots. You've got some big hills that it can get pretty hairy for a dump truck to come up or down with a bed up in the air. I mean, there is places for it. It's just, you don't
Worth
need
having
to
it?
use
though?
it
I mean,
every
is
day.
Is it set so your brake's gonna?
If
get
we're
stuck
not pulling
or-
it, it's just gonna, tires are flat on it.
Yeah. But I mean, that's why we didn't want one down there because you had 8 more tires you had to take care of. I think there's 3 air tanks on that thing. I mean, it's just, there was so much more to take care of, but
I think if we're not using it enough, I think we should push it on down the road. I mean, that's just me, but
and I don't have a
Well,
problem
problem
with it.
is we don't have tractors.
didn't we just buy one of those a few years ago?
Yeah, for up at Lacine, yes. And the Mound City and the landfill lane had a semi.
They pulled it for a while, then we started having trouble with it, so.
I would just soon as have an end dump or two than those belly dumps. Because you could get so much more out of an end dump than you can that belly dump. Only thing you can do with a belly dump is haul rock and very, very good dry dirt.
Weren't the belly dumps asked for to keep us out of power lines and things that way?
Yeah, you ain't got to worry about the power lines, but like I tell my truck drivers, I don't care if you drive that road 2 times, make sure there's not a power line that you're going to hit. Take your time. We're not in a race. We're trying to put rock down, but safely. So if you got to drive down the road, turn around and come back to double check and make sure that there are no power lines, do it. Because I just seen you take the extra 10 minutes to drive down the road than go rip the power line down and maybe kill yourself or, Cause then we're flipping the bill for the power line, the pole and everything.
You know, I think if you have a bunch of stuff that you're not utilizing at your shop that still has a little bit of life in it, I would like to see a list of it and maybe try to push it down the road to, get the best money out of it right now.
Yeah, I don't have
And
a
we
problem.
think,
If it's sitting there, I don't think we need just to look at it.
I think so too, and I think that it seems like we have other needs and stuff that way. We could maybe reallocate those resources to what would help us better instead of having things sit around.
Could you utilize the end up cleaning ditches out of them, as far as something
Well,
on there?
you can haul brush, I got guys out right now because we've been clearing trees off the road since Tuesday, or Sunday.
Sunday night.
You have a tractor to pull it?
Huh?
You have a tractor to pull it?
Well, it would. We're still fighting problems with it, but I mean, it would, yes. But you could haul brush and we've been hauling a lot of dirt. So, I mean, it's just something to think about.
I know you got a lot on your plate, and Harry he's out of here, he says.
Yeah. He's leaving us.
If you can get us a plan of what you need, or, kind of what you think would make your department run more, I'd love to hear it and try to work toward the goals.
Can we talk about the graders and grader operators
What?
and everything that way, as far as how many graders we have within the county, how often they're grading roads, and how long it takes them to do their job on those roads? Are we?
What's it take? Maybe. I think if they set in and went to blading their roads, I think it takes them a week and a half, 2 weeks to cover their whole areas. Some more than others. Some do have a few more miles than some others, but
Got a tornado going outside. Hold on.
I try to keep my guys in the blades as much as possible. When it's dry like this, that's when I try to have other projects because they don't necessarily need to be out there blading roads when it's dry. And
So a lot of people don't understand, if it's too wet, you can't, but if it's too dry, you can't too, right?
well, to a point, yeah. I mean,
Too dry, it ain't gonna stay in the hole.
yeah, nothing's going to stay in the hole, and you just create a ton of dust, which everybody loves, but so I try to have different jobs lined up to where I can send them out and do this instead of blading for these 2 or 3 days or whatever it is, But for the most part, they stay in them as much as I can possibly keep them in it.
I know that, like, the training class that we did a year or two ago,
Yeah, it's been a couple of years ago.
I've heard a lot of good things about that. Is that something that we can look back into and get our home? What can we do?
I don't think we've had a lot of new
Yeah,
blade operators since then. Maybe one, so I mean, for the most part,
They're all doing.
most of them ought to have a pretty good idea of what they need to do and what they're doing out there. Now if we have a big fallout and need 3 or 4 blade operators, that if you're not getting skilled, or at least somebody that at least halfway knows what a blade is, then it'd be something. Right now, I don't think we'd need it, but
Well, I don't have I could probably ask you questions all day just to figure it out, but, I know you guys do a lot of jumping around. You have to, and I appreciate that. That's, you have to put your mind to it to figure out which way's the best, and, and I thank you guys for that. So, we're trying to get you employees, we're trying to get people here, and, hopefully we can get that figured out too, so.
all right. I appreciate it.
I'll make a motion, we tentatively approve the budget for the road and bridge in the amount of $4,577,838.30, which is a reduction
I'll second that motion.
So we got-
of $51,673 from last year.
Motion been moving, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey, one question I do have on those new pieces of machinery that we're getting, do they have like some kind of like bulletproof glass or anything on it for the safety, or does that come with any like screens?
I know you can buy them. I don't remember if these come with them, if we got that option or not. I don't remember.
It's a lot higher if you got to.
Oh, yeah, they ain't cheap, but I know we planned on building a grate to go over, so.
Oh, you guys already have-
We're
okay.
gonna build a grate and we can unhinge and pin on.
I think it'll still break, but it just shatters in real small pieces, is what it does instead of,
Yeah, they won't.
skid steers are that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they won't have that, what do they call it, Lexon, or I think they got some special name for that high temperature stuff.
You have both Bobcats now or just one? You have both of them?
One.
Oh, one?
There's one down here in Mount City.
Okay, there's one down here, the newer one. We got two, right?
Yeah.
They running good?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like them.
You like the doors on them? I hate
It's
them.
a Bobcat.
I don't have anything else. Thank you guys for coming in. Like I said, I didn't ask you guys to come in and ask these questions on the spot. I want everybody to know what you guys did and, how important you guys are to the county. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
The only budget I had for you today was the counselor budget that I think you wanted to talk to Gary about before we did anything. So if you want to get into your other stuff first, we can definitely do that.
Okay.
I think Mr. Cobb's here. We got son him walk in, I think.
I think, are you ready to move to that topic now?
I think we are, aren't
I think, well, one of the things we need to do first is about a 5-minute executive session on legal matters to talk about a couple issues before we go into that. Mr. Koff will be in that. Me.
we? Darren or anybody else or just him?
I'd probably Darren, yeah.
I'll make a motion to go into executive sessions for 5 minutes for legal with Mr. Cobb and Darren Wilson.
I'll second it.
Motion been moved, second, all in favor?
Aye.
You're just gonna call back, Jason called David or?
I can bring my phone in there and give him a call on that.
Okay. That'll work.
I think how we're gonna do this is this is, Mr. Culp, is it Culp or Cop? Cop, Mr. Cop. We're gonna let him kind of just take over the floor for a little bit and let him explain, from the very beginning, his background and why we hired him to do this and, why he's the best to do it and kind of move forward that way, so.
Well, I will set up, Mr. Chairman. I'm here doing this because they hired me to do it. Okay? My name's Jim Kalp. I'm a solo practitioner lawyer up in Topeka. And I've been practicing over 40 years, and this is my last go around. Okay, I'm heading out the door soon after this project is ended, or my wife will be very upset. But I've worked with a lot of cities and counties over the years, and started this project back in November or so of last year. I told the, excuse me, my voice is very good today. Told the commissioners when I got the contract that my target was to get it all done in about 6 months, because I knew that there was interest in getting some new regs on the books in a forthright fashion. And we just barely missed the 6 month window due to some unforeseen health issues on my part, but anxious to get this project wrapped up. I know there's been a great deal of interest on wind and solar energy, solar farms, wind farms. And I knew that coming in because of the 2022 comprehensive plan that the county had. The text of that plan was clear that there was a lot of public interest in both topics, both for and against. But if any of you were at the public hearing up in Linn, at the school in Linn back in April, you heard me say that while the solar and wind took a great deal of the time and study of the Planning Commission, it is far and away, it's a small part of the total rewrite of the land use regulations. And Mr. Chairman, I don't know that you want me to get into a spiel about all the changes that have been made or are being proposed to be made here, but we made some pretty important changes to the regulations that you've all had on the books for the last 20 or so years. And I hate for those to be, way in the background, because they're important issues that the Planning Commission took up and we put forward to the Board of County Commissioners here. So if the commission has any comments or questions about anything other than those topics, I'd be glad to address them.
How often should we, and you said the last 20 years, it's been a long time. How often should we review these and make sure we're up to date?
Well, Mr. Chairman, by state law, the Planning Commission is obliged to take a review of the regulations and the plans every year. That should be just part of on the calendar every year to see if there's some need for changes. And that's pretty important. Not everybody does that. Not everybody follows that statute. But the reason for it, it's a good government step, because if things are happening in the community, it's really easy to fall behind the curve if you wait 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So to answer your question, it's really a matter of what's happening in the unincorporated part of the county. Because that could justify, while these proposed regulations are brilliant, okay, and they're flawless, they may not be in 6 months from now, depending upon how things play out, unforeseen circumstances. But anyway, that's not a very good answer to you. It's just picking an arbitrary date of saying 10 years, 15 years. That's too often in some places where there's no activity going on. My home county could probably go 20 years between taking a look at a plan and regulations. But if things are moving faster here, then you move up the calendar.
Okay.
Just procedurally, I just want to remind you, commissioners, that the Planning Commission brought a set of revised zoning regulations and a set of revised subdivision regulations to you a few weeks ago. You had the option of passing them as they were, of rejecting them as they were or sending back to the commission with specific instructions for reconsideration. And that's what you chose to do. You sent them back with some, I think, 6 specific items that you wanted them to take, 6 specific items that you wanted to take another look at and make additional detailed findings, knowing that they had discussed these items, but there were no written findings for you to rely upon. You have since received those findings back. I sent them out to you. I think everybody's had a chance to review them. And I think that Mr. Kopp is going to review some of those findings with us. If you want to then talk about any of the other changes, commissioners, in the zoning regulation, in addition to those six areas findings, he's indicated that he's open to doing that too. So.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on what Gary's saying, you did receive findings, written findings and recommendations, revised recommendations in some instances from the Planning Commission. They had a study session a couple of weeks ago, and then I met with them last week to put the final touches on those recommendations that were sent to you. And not to be presumptuous, but just so you know, what stuff looked like in black and white, I went ahead and did a red line version of the Article 14, which has the 5 of the 6 issues that you sent back to the Planning Commission. So I went ahead and made entries there consistent with what the Planning Commission. So this is nothing official. It's just for your information. And, and Mr. Chairman, do you want me to walk through each of those recommendations?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I'd like to have that done. Yeah.
Okay. And
I would like that too.
And again, what Gary said, by state law, this is what they used to call the old ping pong rule, where things go back and forth between the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. Back in 1991, that was resolved. Prior to that, it was just it could be an endless sequence of going back and forth, back and forth. But now, by state law, once you send a request for reconsideration back to the Planning Commission, take a look at items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they respond back. Now it's in your court again, and you have the ability to either adopt the revised recommendations or the original recommendations, whatever the Planning Commission has sent back to you, or you can revise or amend them, or you can do nothing.
But you can't send it back to them.
Well, the law doesn't speak specifically to that, but yes, you could. I mean, in my opinion, yes, you could. The reason that the law reads the way it does for having it come back to you after the initial sending back to the Planning Commission for initial reconsideration, the law was changed to avoid a situation where you just had a standoff, where the Planning Commission might not respond to the Board of County Commissioners. And that had happened back in the old days. There were instances like that. But it's your pleasure. In my opinion, I don't want to speak for Gary, but in my opinion, you can send it back to the Planning Commission for reconsideration as many times as you want. Because you guys are the top of the pile. You make the final decision. You adopt whatever it is that you choose to adopt. So it's your call to do that. So if there's something in any of these issues that you sent back to the Planning Commission for reconsideration that you're not comfortable with, you can either change it here by your own vote and adopt the language you want, or you could send it back again for further reconsideration.
Okay.
Long story short.
There you
Okay. 5 of the, start off on the solar issues. You've got a wind issue too that you asked for reconsideration of. But on the winds, on the solar side, the first issue that I had is the countywide cap, the 8,000, what is now an 8,000 acre total countywide cap.
The recommendation they brought previously was 4,000, so.
Right. If you look on, I don't know if you have the summary sheet here from the planning commission. But there was reconsideration. There's pretty extensive discussion about the issue. And there was I think it's fair to say it's a strong feeling on the part of the county commission, I'm sorry, the planning commission, that there be some outer limit and a cap, an acreage cap for solar farms. And I think I know there are members of the planning commission here that, could respond to this if asked, but I think the basic idea was this is a new land use for the county, if it happens. If people come forward and request a conditional use permit, it's a new thing. It's a new topic for the county. It's a new land use. And frankly, I don't think anybody here knows whether or not that would be a positive experience for the county or a negative one. We just don't know. It's new, okay? And given that, I think the planning commission's thought was that before just kicking the door wide open to any and all FIS farms, any and all places around the county, that there should be some initial limit on what on how many acres could be devoted to conditional use permits for solar farms. It has been suggested that, and I think you've had correspondence from one or more of the solar companies, and it has been suggested that instead of having a cap on an acreage cap on the county, that you rely upon the fact that the scheme here is a conditional use permit. And that at some point, if I understand the argument correctly, at some point, if you did not have a cap, you could still control restrict the number of acres devoted to solar farms by the conditional use permit process. I respectfully disagree with that position. I think it's fraught with some dangers because you have a scenario where if those are the rules of the road, you have a scenario where I come forward with my application at some point in time in the future for a solar farm, for a conditional use permit for a solar farm. And the planning commission sits there and says, well, you've crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, but we think we've already got enough. We have enough solar farms for the time being, and you turn me down. Well, I'm gonna think about challenging that decision because it seemed to be on the face of it to be arbitrary. You approved the permit for the last guy, and now you're turning it down for me because you said it's too much, too many. So that's the scenario where you're using conditional use permit process as some kind of a restriction upon the total acreage that can be devoted to this kind of a land use. Whereas if you have a cap built into the regulations themselves and you hit that cap and I come knocking on Darren's door and say, I want to make application, he points to the language of the regulations that say, hey, we've met the cap. Your application will not be considered, because we're at the cap. And he'll also tell me, because he's a smart guy, he'll also tell me if I don't like that outcome, I can lobby the county. I can talk to you guys about making an amendment to that figure, that 8,000 acre figure, what is now proposed to be an 8,000 acre figure, and see if there's a persuasive argument for moving that number. Similarly, you all can decide, if you go with the 8,000 that's recommended by the planning commission, you could decide today that that's too many. You could decide at some point in time, if this is adopted at 8,000, you could decide 6 months from now, well, maybe it ought to be 5,000. You could move the number up or down.
So if we keep it at 8,000, and all these companies that went out to all these people and signed contracts for their land, which I don't know how it's even happening, but then we get all these requests for a CUP that come to his desk, and then we hit this 8,000 mark, and then the next guy's mad about not taking his consideration. Is it first come first serve, or how do we approach that?
Well, if I'm that guy and I can come in here and tell you why that number should be higher and convince you, then what you do is you don't make the change yourself. You direct the planning commission to take a look at it and to consider an amendment, hold a public hearing on that issue, and then send a recommendation back to you guys, and you have final say. again. You could either accept that recommendation or adopt your own number. I understand, it takes a little bit of time. That process heats up the clock a little bit, but it's a good government way. I mean, you touch every base. You don't cut the planning commission out. You get their recommendation, whether you like it or not. And if you like it, you adopt it. If you don't, you revise or amend it.
So,
Not the perfect answer to your question.
No, no,
I understand, and I also understand, anytime you put a cap on there, that could mean that that might create an incentive for people to get their application in, be first in line. I understand that.
so just so everybody out here understands is, if there's companies going out, getting them to sign these contracts with them to put solar on their land, that doesn't mean anything, because it still has to come back to us or to the planning, and they have to do a CUP and then a hearing and all that before it's even approved at all, right?
It's an assumption of risk on the part of the company. If they come in to me and say, they got my name, we strike a deal, that does not dictate to you guys or to the county what
It's strictly
what
an
happened.
agreement between the company and the landowner.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, anyway, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, that's the one sheet you got back from the Planning Commission. This is section 14-406, and in that red line version. And so it's just a matter of changing the 4,000 to 8,000 in 14-406A. I do feel obliged to, and I'll mention this a couple times, is to go through these issues that you sent back to the Planning Commission. Each one of these documents that is sent to you has a heading of background, gives you a little fine point about what the background on that particular issue. And I mentioned that there was no public opposition to a cap. And that means at the public hearing for members of the citizens that were attending, there was no opposition to the cap. But in fairness, EDF, Renewable Energy, and Clearway both submitted written materials that are part of as a record. And both those companies opposed the having a cap. And Clearway representative at the public hearing did speak. And I should have noted that on the sheet. I just did not, but they did express opposition to having a cap on the solar. And again, you guys have 1,000 things on your table at any point in time. The Planning Commission doesn't. Okay, they're focused on the regulations. So I don't want to presume too much about the detail that you've gone through. So I should have prefaced this by saying that the basic scheme of the proposed solar regulations is you have domestic systems, which are by and large unregulated. And domestic systems mean that I want to put some solar in my backyard, or my house, or my business, or you guys want to put one over here, somewhere on county property. And we identify that as being an accessory use. And it's domestic because it means at least, 50% or more of the power that's generated is being used on site. You're not in the business of generating power. You're using it on site primarily. And also there's an acreage limitation of 10 acres. You can't have a domestic system of over 10 acres. But if you meet these very basic, pretty rudimentary regulations for a domestic solar system, all you have to do is come down and get a very simple permit from Darren. And you don't go to the Planning Commission. You don't stop here to get your approval.
A typical big time solar operation is typically how many acres? I mean, does that just,
Well,
they ain't just gonna go in and put on 100 acres and say, here, this is our operation, are they?
well, we made a break in here, Mr. Chairman, of the for the size. Let me get to my notes here. Well, go back here to 14, 40. Well, 14102 has that distinction between the domestic, the commercial, and industrial, or I'm sorry, utility solar systems. If you have, and then their definitions are in 14-201, for domestic, commercial, and utility. To get if I don't qualify for domestic, if I'm not interested in getting a domestic permit for the solar system, I have commercial, and I could be 0 to 160 acres. And again, the distinction between domestic and commercial is not just the size of the operation, but it's also where's the energy going. And if it's primarily going off, I'm selling the energy, then I'm a commercial, okay, if I'm under 160 acres. And to get a permit, a conditional use permit for a commercial solar operation, I have to be under 160 acres or smaller. And I'm going to be on the ag zone land, and I'm going to get a conditional use permit. Okay, the great majority, you guys know this, the great majority of the county is zoned ag, right? So it's a lot of opportunity out there for a commercial scale solar energy project, but I still have to have, not just have the underlying zoning of ag, but I've got to get a conditional use permit from the county and meet all these requirements that are set out in Article 14. If I'm more than 160 acres, I'm a utility. I've got a utility solar energy conversion system. And to have that, my underlying zoning, my base zoning has to be either industrial, light industrial or heavy industrial, I1 or I2. And on top of that, I need to get a conditional use permit. To get the conditional use permit, I got to run through all the requirements that are set out in the section. So got domestic, commercial, and utility. It's a fairly basic, straightforward.
So the 8,000 only pertains to commercial and utility then?
Right. Yeah, still got the 10-acre maximum on domestic, but you might have 100 domestic systems around the county. So. So I didn't come here to ask you guys questions, but what are there thoughts, concerns about having a cap at all, or the figure that is recommended back to you, 8,000?
I personally don't have. I think they spend a lot of time coming up with their thoughts. I'm good with what they said.
It was a lot of discussion and a lot of effort by
They went to
a bunch of volunteer
great efforts.
citizens.
People to volunteer to do what they did and spent a lot of time.
I will tell this, just full disclosure. The idea of the cap itself, I have not seen that in other regulations. I looked at a lot of regulations around the state and some national models too. I've not seen the cap. There may be others that have a cap, but this comes back to me, okay? I thought it was a way to respond to the concern expressed in the comprehensive plan and elsewhere among members of the Planning Commission that the county could get overwhelmed, by this possible new land use. And by overwhelmed, I mean just have a basic change in the rural character of a very, very beautiful county.
But you don't think capping it, putting a number at it, are we putting ourselves in way for, being in court, for being sued, for being unequal or anything like that? And is that why you haven't seen the 8,000?
I just don't think anybody had the brainstorm, Chairman. But you know this from being in government, you can get sued for all sorts of things. It's a question of whether you have a defensible position. To challenge that, having it in the regulations would mean somebody would need to go in and challenge the figure as being unreasonable. Okay. And I think that would be you have a presumption of reasonableness in your regulations. You're operating here as a legislative body, so it's a heavy burden upon somebody to challenge something on the face of it to say this is an unreasonable provision, you know?
Actually, their challenge would be to the whole concept of a cap, probably.
Yeah.
As opposed to because the courts aren't gonna say this number's right and that number's wrong. Courts are gonna say, is your process correct?
And I guess that's what I was meaning is, is there a reason why they didn't put that in there for legality or anything like that? But
Well, I want you to know that I could not tell you that such and such a county, has the exact same thing. They don't, to my knowledge. There may be others around the country that do, but I'm not aware of it.
yeah, I agree with Jim. Planning and zoning put a lot of effort in, and they've had a lot of meetings, and I've sat in on a few of them, and I see to what depth they all go, and appreciate, their feedback. So I'm in favor of the 8,000 too.
Jason, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
You got any opinion on the 8,000?
I'm fine as long. I think we should keep a cap as well. I'm fine with the 8,000 as far as where we set it to.
And just let me ask, you've all read the findings proposed by the planning commission regarding that particular thing, so, okay.
So do we need anything on that for taking it from, their first findings was 4,000, their recommendation was 4, now it's 8. Do we need anything to,
Their findings explain why
but we don't need nothing on our side. We're just gonna do it all at once? Or?
we can adopt their findings when we're done.
Okay, all right. So then we're on to the next.
Yeah, the next one I have, Mr. Chairman, is the power purchase agreement, which was section 14405. And I think, EDF and Clearway, again, they had input about this provision, and I think they made a good point. 2 points, actually. One was to clarify that this was never intended to be a mandate that you had to have a power purchase agreement in order to get in the door. That's not the way it was intended, but we tweaked the language a little bit to make that as clear as possible. It's only if there is one, you can either submit that agreement, or change number 2, you could submit an affidavit that contains public information about the agreement that you have. So we're not asking anybody to divulge, private business information, confidential information as part of the application process.
And, the reason that was brought up, do you know what the planning and zoning's opinion on why they were so strongly about having that in these regulations? Is because it's scared that farms set there and then not be utilized and pick up land, or what do you think?
That is it in a nutshell, Mr. Chairman. And it's a pretty common, the provisions that I read that have been adopted around Kansas, it's a pretty common provision. More often than not, there's a power purchase agreement provision in the application process.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll notice that they made 2 alternative recommendations. One is to eliminate that section altogether. The second was to clear up the language so it's clear that it's not mandatory to submit, to have a contract in place.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Yeah, that's, I skipped over that. But the planning commission has put it in your hands, okay? It said if you don't want to have the provision at all, take it out. But if you keep it in, revise it so it's going to be acceptable to the solar companies. And I think this language would be acceptable. It's again a pretty common requirement.
I'm good with that. Jim?
I'm good with leaving
Jason?
it as far as acceptable.
Jason, what do you think? You got any thoughts on that?
I'm good with what we're doing on this one.
Thank you, Commissioner. The next issue, if we're ready to move on, is section 14409. If you look at the red line version there, 14409 is relating to prime ag land. And you asked for the planning commission to reconsider the need for any limitation upon how much prime ag land could be taken up in a conditional use permit. And what coming back to you, some recognition, I think, by the planning commission, that there are other provisions in the regs that are going to hopefully minimize or at least mitigate damage to the productivity of prime ag land if it's contained within the boundaries of a conditional use permit. And I think the industry representatives have made good points too, that, you know, we're in some places around the country, you have a solar farm and underlying the panels is gravel. Okay. And we're not allowing that. I mean, these regs don't allow for that. We require vegetative cover, which goes a long ways towards protecting the soil, right? But the reality is, and there are other provisions too, erosion control and grading requirements and so forth that are intended to make sure that the topsoil isn't stripped off and dumped somewhere. You know, so there are a number of provisions, and they're noted in the document here, that will protect prime ag land. But I believe the thinking of the planning commission is that even with those protections in there, you're still taking land out of productivity, okay, for 20 years, 25 years, whatever the useful life is of the farm. And while the productivity post project might not be damaged, might not be lessened, still for that period of time, you're taking that land out of production. And consequently, the planning commission believes that it's desirable to have some limitation upon the amount of prime ag land that can be taken up. The coming back to you following reconsideration was to maintain the 50% maximum that was in the original recommendation, but to increase the size of the solar project that would be subject to that 50%. In the original recommendation, it was any solar farm over 80 acres would be subject to the 50% limitation on prime ag land. This coming back to you, 1449 would change the 80 to 160. So
is the setbacks and everything considered part of the prime land total of that they can use? I mean, is it just the spot that the solar panels are on top of?
well, there's 14409B makes a specific provision that the prime ag land that's in a buffer or setback is not counted towards that 50%.
Okay.
Okay, because you still, grant you're still taking it out of production but you may be haying, you know, but it's untouched. It's untouched. It's a buffer. You're not installing any apparatus on it. So that part of the original recommendation stays the same.
And the prime ag land is based off the study that is done on the property that is
Right.
reviewed in the CUP.
Right, Commissioner. It's a common thread through the regulations here that rather than put 40 or 50 pages of detailed regs in here, exactly what you have to do this, and this, and there are regulations out there that are 40 or 50 pages long in Kansas, okay? The concept here on this point and on others is to place the responsibility on the applicant to show that they're complying with the basic standard that you have. So rather than load this up and saying, that your prime ag land has to meet these definitions, these qualifications, it's really what an applicant would do would be to, in my opinion, what an applicant would be smart to do would be to rely upon USDA information, data as to whether or not land within their proposed conditional use permit area meets the qualifications of prime ag land. And I think the county would accept that, designation of USDA, what the USDA would say is prime ag in Linn County. And if I didn't mention this before, again, while there was on this issue of the preservation of prime ag land, while we didn't have any citizen comment at the public hearing on that, both EDF and Clearway have provided written in Clearway's case, verbal testimony favoring either reduction or removal of that requirement. And the industry did make a good point again that, you know, if you have vegetative cover under there, you're not disturbing the ground. But you are taking out production, but you are not affecting the productivity of the soil if all the regulations are followed appropriately. And the planning commission considered that point.
So the recommendation, the revised recommendation you have before you is to stay with the 50% limitation, but raise the trigger from 80 acres to 160. Anything less than 160 acres would not fall into this regulation.
I'm good with that. Jason?
I am as well.
And I assume you've all read the findings and agree with them as well on that one?
Yes.
Hey, Commissioner, Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, 14410, this is a quick one. This is the wildlife corridors. It came to you as a requirement that if you were over 80 acres, you had a conditional use permit for more than 80 acres for a commercial operation, that you would have to have a wildlife corridor. That raised some objection from the industry. I think, again, both EDF and Clearway suggested or requested your consideration of removing it. On reconsideration by the planning commission, we decided to dump it. So with your approval, that would be removed.
I'm good with that recommendation. Jason, you good with that recommendation?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Chairman, the next issue is the buffer plan, buffer screening, landscaping, whatever you want to call it. It's section 14-701. I think once again, at the public hearing, there were no citizen comments, but in written testimony, both Clearway and EDF had some suggestions for reducing the size of the setback, and but not an objection to having something on the books itself, something on that subject. So what the planning commission sent back to you upon reconsideration was to soften the requirement. Previously, the requirements, there was one set of requirements for a project that was 20 acres or smaller, and another set of requirements that are more demanding if you had greater than 20 acres. So let me see if I can explain this straightforward way. The recommendation coming back from the planning commission is to have a 3-tier set of requirements. One for projects of less than 40 acres. Okay, so these are small ones. And the setback, instead of being 25 feet for every permitted acre, up to 150 feet, so potentially 150-foot setback would be changed to a 25-foot setback, minimum setback, with 5 feet of vegetative buffer for every permitted acre up to 20 feet. Okay, so if I've got a 40-acre project, I'm going to have a 25-foot setback, and 20 feet of that is going to be landscape buffer. Okay, and the concept of buffering and setbacks, screening, and all this is pretty obvious. I mean, it's the aesthetics. I mean, that's the long and the short of it, is to soften the visual impact or remove the visual impact of the solar farm from folks, either adjoining properties or perhaps most commonly people traveling up and down public roads. Okay, we're not talking about hiding, but it's just putting some screen out there.
And we're requiring that, like some shrubs or trees or
Yeah.
On 10-foot centers is what it says.
So again, if you're 40 acres or smaller, you've got this setback of 25 feet with up to 20 feet of vegetative cover. If you are between 40 acres and 160 acres, your setback would be 50 feet, okay? And there'd be 20 feet of that, a minimum of 20 feet of that setback would be vegetative cover. On top of that, for all of these, you have a setback of 200 feet from the boundaries of any conditional use permit area and the nearest residence, okay, 200 feet out distance, unless the owner of that property, the owner of that residence, says, I'm waiving that, I want to waive that, and I would accept a smaller setback, potentially all the way to the property line, I suppose, okay? No limit on that. And then all of them also have the minimum setback or spacing distance between one solar farm and another of 2,500 feet. Again, just so you avoid concentration of solar farms. And then coming back to that third tier, the largest solar farms, 160 acres or more, would have a 100-foot setback with 50-foot of vegetative buffer. Now, the last thing this is also new from the Planning Commission on reconsideration, and that is the language under subsection C, for the heading of modified setbacks and screenings, says the Planning Commission may approve smaller setbacks and/or vegetative cover for any solar system upon a finding of good cause and that public interest would not be harmed. So just a quick example, my project borders on a wooded creek. Okay. Why would you want me to have a setback or any screening? Why should I plant trees when I already got trees there? So I would come to the Planning Commission and say, I don't need this here along this property line. There's no need for it. And I'm sure the Planning Commission would then say, well, you're right. Okay, it's no sense in wasting
And that's
time and
determined during
money.
the CUP. Right, that's determined during the CUP hearing, right?
Yeah. So there was a lot of spirited discussion among the planning commissioners about the need for setback and buffering and what the numbers should be. But this is where the majority position was.
So if you have a neighbor and you had to have a setback, you have that buffer, then you still got to put trees and stuff along your neighbors along that line too, right? Not just the county
Right,
highway?
right, along property lines and along the road.
I'm good
Right
with
away.
that. Jim, Jason, you guys got anything?
I'm good.
I don't have anything.
I believe, Mr. Chairman, that was all of the, those were the issues sent over to the planning commission expressly by the board. There were a couple other issues that had been raised by the industry that you did not send to the planning commission. Do you have any discussion about that or want any discussion about that?
Gary, how does that work with this being a special meeting over these topics? How does that?
If there are additional things that have already been raised in regard to these that you want to discuss that are not in here, you can do that. I don't remember what those other issues were.
Well, the one that was raised by EDF, I think is a really good point, and it relates to a section of the proposed zoning regulations that's not in front of you. It's over in Article 20, and that is the time in which to commence construction once you get a conditional use permit. And that's a general requirement. If I get a conditional use permit, the regs say that I have to commence construction within a month. I'm sorry, with one year, with one year. Blanket rule. The industry, or EDF, has said that that's not realistic for them. And I'm not speaking for them, but they proposed it to be 3 years instead of 1 year as a time to commence construction.
I'm not in favor of a 3. I mean, I want to see if they're going to sign, if they want a CUP for a piece of land, I want to see it go into operation as fast as possible. I don't want to be a savings account or a backup plan to anybody. I mean, that's my opinion. Yeah.
That's what I feel too.
They were also concerned that it would be a race to get your CUP in, and then they wouldn't have any chance if the CUP didn't come to fruition, if they didn't build it out. You know, so I think this stipulation puts in there so that they have to build it out, or we're moving on to another provider, another possible CUP.
And that's a good point, Mr. Commissioner. The requirement is to commence construction. And there's a case law in Kansas about what amounts to commence construction. It means more than turning a spade of dirt, but
But it doesn't mean completion by any means.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there any provision in there anywhere if they could apply for an extension to that if there's some special circumstance?
I did not put something like that in there, Commissioner.
Yeah, I'd like to see construction, happen as soon as possible and get moving on it. I mean, I think it'd be unfair to other companies that, would be sitting there waiting. What do you?
Yeah, I'm good with the way it is.
Okay. I think some of the other matters that have been raised by the industry are really matters that can be handled administratively by Darrell process. And if there's glitches along the way, then we'll fix them. But generally, I'm pretty pleased with the level of critique or criticism that the industry has had of the regs. So I think it'd be fair to say, I don't know if they would agree with me, and I don't know if there's anybody here from the solar industry, but I think we have kind of a middle ground here. There are some counties in Kansas where there aren't any rules at all. It's just, open shop. There are other counties that have really pretty severe set of regulations where I think these regulations are in the middle.
Yeah, I'm good with all this.
And we had one recommendation on wind.
Yeah. And
Can we talk about before we get into that, can we talk about, so when they come, so everybody understands that you can't just sign a lease and, what is all included in the CUP? You do studies of agriculture, you do architectural, there's all kinds of studies that you do, right?
Right. We'll have to get a licensed Kansas engineer that will do this study, and it's paid for by the company that's applying.
Which is why we didn't put in the regs, because that's not something we would pay for, right?
That's correct.
It's in the regs, but it's in the regs that they pay for.
Right. Right. They'll do, I'm sure that part of the studies will be the land, prime ag land. I'm sure there's all kinds of things that they'll look at.
And you'll send, during that, you'll send all the neighboring people letters, and they'll have their chance to come in during a hearing and oppose.
Yeah, so the process of a conditional use permit is we get an application, depending on how it falls in the month, but I've got to post it in the newspaper, then it's a 20-day waiting period before the Planning and Zoning Commission can hear it for that public hearing. They have the public hearing, then you have to wait 14 more days before it can be brought before the county commissioners for their approval, denial, or wait.
For the public hearing, letters are sent to all property owners within 1,000 feet of the boundaries of the property being applied for. That's how they get notice. It's also published in the newspaper.
Correct.
And so there's plenty of opportunity to attend this public hearing if you have something you want to say about it. And that's the one opportunity that the people are guaranteed a right to speak, as long as they do it in a peaceful and appropriate way.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear out, make sure everybody understood that we're not just going to sign do all those studies, sign CUP, and then allow somebody to move in next to somebody without the site.
There'll be plenty of notice, there'll be a public hearing. Sometimes, from the time they begin their application process, it's a while before the application is complete too.
Yeah.
And, usually there's an awareness that this is going on during that time.
I would mention one other thing here, just on the subject of public participation. Not only do, as Gary said, is there the requirement of notice for nearby property owners, but also the public notice printed in the paper, hold a public hearing, and anybody that, anybody has an interest has an opportunity to speak to the planning commission. Once a recommendation comes from the planning commission up to you guys, there's also, by state law, there's a protest period, a protest petition period. And if folks object to the application, not to the decision by the recommendation by the planning commission, it's often misunderstood. It's an objection to the proposed project. They can submit a protest petition to you all, and requiring a supermajority vote. And in the case of you are a 5-member.
Well, we're a 3-member board.
3-member.
So it doesn't change anything for us.
I'm sorry?
It doesn't really change anything for us.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, it's a.
Does it require
Yeah.
a unanimous vote?
Yeah, well, it's by 3/4, so it's 75%. So, yeah,
So that would be.
versus 66. So, yeah, it's a unanimous vote requirement. And so in the case of a utility project, for example, if I have to get property rezoned to industrial, I mean, that's my first step. I get that industrial zoning designation. There's an opportunity there's a public hearing on that. There's an opportunity for a protest on a rezoning, just like any other rezoning that you all consider. There's an opportunity for a protest petition on that. And then you also have, the way these regulations are drafted, the conditional use permit is also subject to a protest petition. Okay? So there's a lot of opportunity for public input. You ready for Linn?
I think so. Somebody else have anything? You got any? Jason?
Yes.
And from the summary sheet that I gave to you all, that there are two roads to go down with respect to wind. One is, we're talking about large wind farms, so we'll get away from leave the domestic issue for a moment, okay? Just on a commercial wind farm, you can either prohibit or you can regulate. Those are that's the universe, okay? You either prohibit. Well, the universe is also have no rules at all, okay? You can do that. So there's three courses of action. Do nothing at all on the subject and allow wind farms to go whenever, wherever, and whenever, and without regulation. Or you can the middle ground, I guess, is you regulate them, allow but regulate them, and then the other end of the range is is to prohibit commercial wind farms. The Planning Commission considered the options of regulating or prohibiting. They looked at draft regulations that did both of those. I know you all have seen both versions of those regulations, and I think there was a lot of discussion. A lot of reference back to the results of the 2022 comprehensive plan, and just felt that, again, I'm trying to do a fair job here of articulating what the Planning Commission's position is. What I heard from them was that the commercial wind farms were simply incompatible with the rural character of Linn County. I mean, in a nutshell, okay? For instance, and this again is primarily aesthetics, but there are other issues as well, but I think it's primarily the matter of the aesthetics. Contrasting wind to solar, the solar farm, we have a provision in the regulations that you have a maximum height of 15 foot for solar panels and apparatus. And then you have the buffering and landscaping screening provisions too. Uh, 15 feet, you can screen from public view. Wind tower, 150 foot high, you can't. That's just the reality. I mean, and nobody can dispute that. I mean, they're out there. Some people see them as attractive. Other people see them as a nuisance. And it's just the reality. I grew up in western Kansas and, there are wind farms all over the place out there. And some people love the site, other people hate it. And it is what it is. But the consensus position of the Planning Commission upon reconsideration was to stick with the recommendation of prohibiting commercial wind farms, allowing the domestic setups on people's farms or residential properties or even commercial and public land.
Is it typical to allow one, like clean energy to allow one but not the other, to regulate one and prohibit the other? Or are they always considered separate?
Well, it's a good question. The aesthetics, I get, there's an aesthetic issue with respect to a single tower on my farm, right? I'm going to have a domestic system. It's 150 feet tall, just like a commercial system would be. And I can have one every 20 acres, I believe. But the limitation for me, and the reason you probably won't see a proliferation of those domestic systems, is that the energy produced has to be primarily used on site. I've got a dairy farm, I use a lot of electricity, or I'm going to be on the cutting edge. I got an electric tractor, it's going to get charged up. I can have a windmill, my wind turbine, and as long as 51% or more of that energy is being produced on site, under these regs, I can do that. I can sell the rest to whoever. And that's not I would add to that, that there's no legal requirement that you have to allow these domestic systems.
Right now, right? I mean, right now, there's not. But so that's where I look at, like, I can sit on my porch at my house, live on a hill, and I can see like 9 different cell phone towers.
Yeah.
And, I'm thinking to myself, like, is that something that wind will turn in? Because we don't really get a say in if a cell phone tower comes here or not. Correct, Gary?
The fences
So-
have taken that out of your
So
hands.
the thought in my mind is like, they get tired of hearing from everybody, about opposing these things, and they're just like, they're coming. They're coming no matter what. Now deal with them. Do you think that's something that'll happen with the wind? I mean, has it been fought enough in court for us to be able to prohibit it? I mean, or do you think it's going to keep going and people, or they're just going to say, hey, we're going to allow it in the county. You guys deal with it.
Well, I don't have anything to base this. It's just my opinion, okay? But my opinion is you're going to see more wind and you're going to see more solar in Kansas and most other places around the country over time. It's going to happen. You all have, if you go with the prohibition route, are you going to be facing this issue next year, the year after that? And you go, probably so. There'll be parties that will.
So should we have a fund for legality?
I
just feel like if we're limiting somebody to their rights.
Well, and that's a legitimate point of view.
But we haven't had anybody throughout this whole process speak up like we have on the solar. We're giving them their chance right now to have their say in this process, and so far they've chosen not to.
Who are you referring to? The people or the
wind power advocates?
Both. We have had nobody come to us the way they have on the solar part.
Yeah, in the summary sheet that I prepared for you all about the wind, in this instance, it's absolutely correct that at the public hearing, the only comments made with respect to wind were favorable for the prohibition. But I don't believe we had any comments regarding the domestic system and no comments from the public or anybody representing the industry regarding in opposition to the proposed prohibition. What went before the public at the public hearing was, of course, the initial recommendation of the Planning Commission to prohibit commercial wind farms.
So I guess I ask you, you don't have to give your personal opinion, or Gary, either one. I mean, what's your guys' stance on it as us prohibiting something and taking everybody's rights completely away from it, rather than putting just really strong restrictions on it that benefits the county?
I have become convinced, Danny, that this is the best way to go if you want to limit it, because this is less, this, I think, was seen as less arbitrary based upon how they came to this conclusion. If you know, this is, you've read their finding. It's thoroughly reasoned out. They have some, now you may not agree with their reasons, but they're there. And that's what a court looks at.
But what I'm concerned about is there's been one county that's kind of went in the court about this stuff, is what they stated. I don't know exactly what it was. It's kind of fought against it.
Well, Muncie County went as far as the Kansas Supreme Court, yeah.
Which was in the case, who was named in the case as the plaintiff and the defendant? Was it the landowner?
The county was the defendant.
Okay, no, the landowner. So what if somebody like some big, huge corporate comes in and wants to sue us over this stuff for limiting? I mean, where's that put us? I mean,
That's why we have insurance.
I'm not trying to be flip about this at all, and get your real legal advice from your county counselor, but it's so for, you get sued on everything.
Right.
And it's important to keep, you want to be knowledgeable as to what risk you're incurring, but you ought to be cautious about letting it stand in the way of doing what you think is in the best interest of the county. That sounds like a lecture, and I apologize for that, but like I said, I'm at the end of my career, okay, so I can. Okay. I was doing this before you were born, Sharon. You could get sued either way you go. Okay? I think, just to make your life easier here, I know, it's being sarcastic here. The prohibition route, we have a record, that starts with the comprehensive plan that you had from last year, where there was strong public opposition in the surveys, strong opposition to wind farms, right? And that's significant in Kansas because of the appellate court decisions that we have that acknowledge the importance of the comprehensive plan. So there's, if I were defending the prohibition, I would point to that comprehensive plan. I would note the language that's in the draft here about the importance of the rural character to the people of this county, and maintaining that rural character, and how the opinion is that wind farms are not compatible with that rural character. Is that an arguable point? You bet it is. Sure it is. But it's probably one that the county could prevail on if challenged. Again, in Kansas right now, the case law favors local governments and the discretion that you all have, and it gives a presumption that you all are acting reasonable, and it's difficult to overcome that legislative decision that you're making to adopt a prohibition. That's on the one hand, okay? On the other hand, the draft that you have seen, the expanded draft that regulates, is there anything in there that would be subject to challenge? Probably not from the industry standpoint, because I think everything that's in there is pretty reasonable. Could you get challenged for adopting a set of regulations that regulate wind? Again, it's possible, but that again becomes there's a high bar there, because the discretion that you have in making decisions like this, one route versus the other, is respected by the courts. And it's difficult to make a successful challenge to whichever decision you make. So
So
that's helpful, right?
what the courts ask, Danny, is not, is this the right decision? They ask, were you reasonable in the way you went about making this decision? That's essentially
It's
accurate statement.
reasonable for us to tell somebody that's had a family farm for 200 years that they can't put something on their land that they want to. I mean,
Well, I can't put a landfill just anywhere I want.
that's true.
No, I'm not
No,
arguing about that. I mean, it's private property rights are close to being sacred in this country, but they're not quite, and never have been. You know, there are, again, there are a number of counties in this state which have already embraced wind farms, you know, and have them, you know, hundreds of wind towers in their county. There are other counties that said no, prohibited. And you've got, one other thing, I guess, it's in the findings here, I did mention it, because the planning commission did have some discussion regarding the Flint Hills area, the tall grass heartland, which you all know, you know, it's parts of 12 counties, I think. And the state of Kansas has just said, no. They call it a moratorium. It's a prohibition. It's been in place for years, and it started with Brownback and has been continued under Kelly. That said there shall not be wind farms in this area because of the natural beauty, the lay of the land, and the flora and the fauna in that area.
And the state did that to the counties.
I'm sorry?
The state's the one that put that on the county.
Yeah. So you can't do it. You can't do it. And I can tell you, if you're talking to some county folks that are in that area, and some of them breathed a sigh of relief, you know, that it was taken away from them, that subject matter was preempted by the state. But the point I wanted to make, Mr. Chairman, was the planning commission had discussion about, you know, similarities between the lay of the land here, what you have both flora and fauna wise, and comparing it to just a short distance west of the tall grass prairie. You know, and that, you know, you talk about unique ecosystems as part of the language of the moratorium that the state put in. I would imagine you have some unique ecosystems in this county too. It's a beautiful county.
Well, I believe the planning and zoning board went to great lengths to make this decision, and I don't think they did it half-heartedly. And
It was not a unanimous position.
no, I know it wasn't, but you know that they did a lot of homework on it, and that's why I feel I'm good with what they've given us.
I don't want to make sure you understand, Mr. Chairman, I respect the private property rights argument too, and the commissioners discussed that at length.
And I'm not saying that I want wind or anything. I mean, I work in Kansas City. I drive down here because I like the slow life, you know, and I'm not trying to, you know, just grow leaps and bounds. But we also don't just have all this industry knocking on our door, giving us an opportunity to justify, you know, help us with bringing under industry here to help justify the taxes we pay. I mean, I can only say it's not my tax budget, but like, this is why I pay the taxes I pay. It's just beautiful land. Like, it comes to a point where, I mean, is there anything, how do you justify paying the taxes if nothing's coming here, you know, McDonald's, Walmart, none of that, you know, people, housing. I just feel like that with that, we're just limiting that even more instead of just putting higher regulations on it to, you know, I try to run the county when I think of things as run like a business. So, I mean, that's an ignorant way of looking at it. I don't know, but I just don't know how we could completely limit it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the buck stops here.
Nobody else does it. Go on to the next county.
What's Jason's thoughts on it?
Jason, you got thoughts?
My thoughts is that this is what has been decided and everything. I think that it has been thorough at this point. I do appreciate that we had both sides presented within the case. And the reason that I'm comfortable with a prohibition on this is based off the fact that we've had no opposition, that they've been given opportunity to oppose, and we are reasonable and willing to listen to them on those objections, but have not had any. So that's why I'm comfortable with the prohibition.
That's what put it on record. I'm not saying I'm for wind towers at all. I'm just saying I think I don't like to limit the possibility, and everybody's right. So please don't call me and tell me how big of a dirtbag I'm wanting windmills here. That's not the case at all. So just to be clear.
I understand exactly what you're saying, Mr. Chairman.
Talk about procedure a little bit, shall we? You can either approve all of these in one lump vote, or if you want to separate the wind out, do it at a separate vote. That might be consistent with what I'm sensing from your thinking. Maybe you could do one vote on all the solar things. And what we want is a vote to accept the revised recommendations and findings of the Planning and Zoning Board, and to instruct Darren to prepare a resolution and a final draft for your action next week, I think, unless you have, I wouldn't have a resolution today, do we?
I've got a resolution.
If you got final draft together?
You want it in two motions, Danny, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as long as I put it in one newspaper article without my name in it.
I'm sorry, say that.
Joking to Barb. Yeah, I mean, if that's the way we need to do it.
Okay.
I think on the solar, we all agree on all the,
Right.
Gary, you said to accept the revised findings.
The revised findings and recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Board.
Darren, is there anything else that you need to add to this before we get moving on a motion on this?
I was just asked by one of the solar companies, are you willing to take any public comment?
I think we've, how do you feel about it? I mean, I think there's been plenty of meetings, there's been plenty of, everything's always been open to the public for people to bring in their opinion and talk about it. I don't want to get into a dispute in here, so.
I'm good with that. Just
That's your call.
And I think we've had plenty of opportunity, and we've listened to their comments and concerns.
So with that, we'll go ahead and proceed with a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept all the findings with the prohibition on wind energy.
I'm going to do it two separate, right?
Yeah,
I'll second that motion.
or the prohibition on wind energy. I'll make a motion that we accept what the Planning and Zoning Commission has brought to us
Just on the wind, you said, right? Okay.
on the wind.
Motion been moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries 2-1.
I'll make a motion that we accept all the findings on the solar energy conversion systems as far as what the Planning and Zoning brought to us.
I'll second. Motion been moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, I know this took a lot of time and effort, and Mr. Cap, you've put a lot of time. I've actually seen you, I actually ran into you guys around the county, and you were doing, I was like seeing you out there. You went around with Jason, and you did your duty, I feel like. So I appreciate all your hard work. Darren, I know you've done the same, and then the committee, I know it's not an easy job either. You guys put a lot of time and effort in, so I appreciate everything that everybody's done. And we're happy to work with you, so thank you. Thank you, Darren.
And the Planning and Zoning, it's all a volunteer board. Every one of them spent a lot of hours there for free. And I want to thank you all for that.
We do.
I echo those comments.
Sorry, Jason, go ahead.
I echo those comments and want to thank everybody involved and the diligence that has been put in to ensure that this process has been responsible, reasonable, and proper.
We do have a resolution prepared. I guess Mr. Cox prepared one, and so you can either adopt this resolution today, not having actually had the final draft in your hand, or you can wait, get the final draft in your hand this week and adopt it next week, whichever you prefer.
How you feel? Jason, how you feel? You want to be back here to, or you're gonna be gone next
I'm
week?
gonna be going.
It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other on that. So if I think we've thought about it, looked at it, discussed it.
You made a motion.
I'm ready to move ahead
You got a number
if you
for it?
guys are.
Do we have a,
It would be 2023-29. Yes.
Do we need a motion to sign that? Or-
You would need a motion to adopt that resolution.
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution 2023-29.
I'll second. Any more discussion on it?
just to be clear, this is a resolution adopting the revised planning and zoning regulations and,
Prohibition.
land,
Subdivision.
subdivision regulations.
And the zoning map.
And
The zoning map.
Right.
Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Got some more budgets now. Is that right, David?
Well, the only other one I have today is actually your counselor budget. I think they wanted to talk to you about that one before.
Thought they might. Mr. Cobb, thank you for your hard work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It's been-
Thank you,
it's
sir.
been a pleasure. Really.
Enjoy your retirement.
I'll do what I can. This is this has the changes.
Okay.
So. Thank you very much. What's the effective date of the resolution? I drafted it.
The effective date,
Talk about budget.
It's a resolution. I think it's probably.
I think so, as I recall. I didn't, yeah, it is, yeah.
Resolution.
Darren's got it.
Oh, there's.
Thanks for what you
Yeah,
did.
thank you.
Done. They've got my
I know you
budget.
got, like this, stuff here. I've dealt with a lot of government. bodies.
Yeah, they're waiting for things to clear out. It's not a sufficient break, it's waiting.
You guys had the benefit and the burden.
They're just gonna do one more.
Yeah. And that's,
I've also said, that meeting was everybody on the practice.
yeah, and that's what's frustrating. You know, get down to the very end here and everything, it's the- they're upset with this, you know, like there's been, public, input and, hopefully we, I'm, we talk about when to review those regs, and hopefully we keep putting ourselves in a position to keep people up in the county, where we do have to keep it. I don't want to build the county massive, but I do want to get us into
I think these regs did a better job for you than what you had.
Oh, I know, I think so. I think it's an amazing job. I appreciate it. I love seeing it out there in the field. That was awesome. That means a lot to me. So I'm more of a hands-on type guy. So that was good to see you out there. I was really impressed. So, I have no doubt they made the right decision.
I don't do work. Really, this is the purpose. This is.
Hope you enjoyed working with us, and we enjoyed working with you. And
It was good. I appreciate being here. Here's the red light.
Yeah, you gave me a copy.
Here's the real red light.
Oh, the red line.
The red. Oh, yeah, the resolution.
I didn't get a copy of it, David.
Well, he said he gave it to Karen.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for coming.
I learned so much. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. This country is too small for us, really difficult.
All right. Hey, you can come here to anytime. Hey, I like that. Thank you for letting us know. We'll,
Yeah, thank you guys for this. I know it's not easy out there. My concern is these outfits aren't pairing up in businesses. They didn't take care of the street guys like that. They don't pay for it. They don't pay for us like this. So it's something we're gonna have to look at. And they're coming in hot.
I agree. Yeah.
So, but thank you guys. I know it's not. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Please don't.
Yeah, I might give you a call.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah, you guys want my stuff?
I think I have it. I might have your husband look at me.
I don't have it.
I met your relative walking away too.
You have?
Yeah. Jim Johnson.
Yeah, he's my brother.
Have you seen him?
He's my younger brother. Tell him he's older than I am. He looks older.
County commissioner.
Coffee County. He was. He did no longer.
But he's got that resolution that.
Well, we're looking at it as far as for the packing.
Yeah.
You think that's a bad deal for, I mean, yeah. It's a
But,
bad.
you know, my parents live in a small parking lot, and my sister now. But it's, they're trying to do
Well, it's just exactly, they've decided that they want the whole pie. And I, my son fed cattle all through that whole deal. It went to 95 cents and he survived. But like I said, it was tough. But, you know, they was just robbing him from us. Well, when you got 4 people, I mean, it's just like when he sells them I mean, he'll sell 2 or 3 pins a week or a month sometimes. I mean, well, and they just come and tell you what they're gonna give you. Then you turn it and go to the Dakotas where they got their open bidding, they're actually fat market, what they'll give for it.
Which is what
What it should be. And then they're set, and
It
they,
has to be investigated at the national level.
well, we have rules, but we don't get to follow. We have Packers and Stockyards Commission, but we don't follow the rules.
Mr. Travis,
I met you up in Topeka.
that's right, but I didn't know if you were.
I only know everybody.
Thank you. That's kind of you. Well, what are you doing? It's been fun. Okay, so.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, in fact, we're headed out west for family.
You still have family?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. We're heading out of the state.
When did they-
After one.
We approved this contract in 2017. It was a little different before that.
So can we just start off by explaining, I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
about our county councilor's, yearly budget, that was proposed to us. And we just asked that we, get a little bit of explanation of why, or what you do exactly.
Okay.
And then,
Happy to.
you know, why we have to have it, you know, in such,
Well, first of all, of course, you got to have a county councilor
to keep my mouth quiet.
for a variety of reasons, but you have to take legal advice. Some counties, the same person is both county councilor and county attorney, but increasingly that's not the case in most places. Thank you, Jim. My job is to advise the board. I represent the county. I don't represent commissioners individually, but I may consult with individual commissioners in my role as advising the board. I also to some extent advise the other departments and elected officials of the county, as long as the situation doesn't create a conflict where the interests of the county or the commission are at odds with the position of the other elected officials. The basic work that I do is to attend regular meeting of the commission. I'm available for phone consultations and questions, prepare necessary documents for the work of the commission, and consult with the commissioners and county officials as required. But then there are additional things that I do from time to time that don't fall within my basic contract. The annual salary that I have is based upon the expectation that those basic items that I mentioned before will take up around 8 to 10 hours per week. That's my typical expectation. Then I bill the county separately for anything that falls into this third group. The stuff that I bill for separately are special projects not within the scope of the normal day-to-day representation or are in excess of 10 hours per week. So for example, when the commissioners asked me to take a special role in the building project, that's something that I bill extra for. I also bill extra for work related to any litigation that the county is involved in. I bill separately for any special meetings or any extra meeting time. So let's say, if we got a meeting, that's one of the reasons I'm typically pushing to get out of here between 11 and 12, because if I stay later than that, I at least can bill you for that additional time. I also bill for some clerical work that I hire people to do in regards to the codes court and the tax sale. And then the county reimburses me for my Association of Counties dues. And so that's the things that we bill separately for. And kind of a summary of the kinds of things that I do. I mean, I write contracts, I write regulations, do a lot of consultation with commissioners and with various county offices. Any questions about any of that?
I do. Why do you think that we are so far above budget on our contractual for 2023?
I think we just took a wild guess last year what it was going to be. One thing that is that in the previous year, we knew we were going to have the building project stuff. What we didn't realize is there's going to be some building project stuff yet this year. We didn't anticipate that when we took a guess at how much the billing might be this year. We did our final payment a month ago or a few days.
So,
And I really think next year there won't be any building project stuff, but we had quite a bit the first part of this year yet that I wasn't anticipating. That's probably the biggest thing.
Okay.
and I think there's probably some that was in this contractual line that I may not have put on the building project line on that budget, just because I didn't go dig far enough to see the split on how much was building and how much was other things.
Yeah. Also, Codes Court is quite a bit more active now than it has been for several years. And when we did this budget, it was last July. I wasn't necessarily anticipating the additional time that we would be spending with Codes Court, but Darren's got us a steady supply of cases coming, and we're staying more active in Codes Court than we used to, especially during the pandemic.
So I see a lot of, like, as a contractor, I got my original scope of work that I, built for, and you have that right here, which is 8 to 10 hours a week, you say. So, but then we have all this other stuff that we know we're gonna have. Why would we not just put that into our original contract with you?
Because the other stuff, we don't have any way of guessing how much time they're gonna be. I might have, in one 6-month period, I might have 2 hours dedicated to litigation. Next 6-month period, I might have 50 hours. And so when there's no way of knowing, I mean, you couldn't begin to set my salary high enough for me to take the risk. I mean, what I
And
would,
what rate do we pay on those hours?
my standard rate is $195 an hour. I haven't raised that for a number of years and don't anticipate raising it.
How many hours a week do you think you work for us, Gary? I guess, I mean, just on average.
Well, I probably spend 15 to 20 hours a week on county stuff.
And you say 10 of that being your regular scope?
A lot of it comes under the regular billing.
And as far as the payroll, how many hours do you figure that, are you giving us on the 99,850, I guess?
Under my payroll, I figure I'm giving you from 8 to 10 hours a week. And then in addition to that, some weeks it'll be 2 or 3 hours in addition. Some weeks it'll be 20 hours in addition. But I'd say it averages another 5 to 10.
And you don't take the benefit package, right? Or the county?
Yes, I'm on the health insurance package.
What do you think, as far as the other building things that we have going on, is going to be as big a project as this is?
No.
Well, that's where my question is, in the contractual. That's where mine's at. I've got questions on that.
I haven't been asked by the commissioners to take a lead role in these other buildings.
Right.
So there won't be much. In fact, most of that would just be approving the contract or something, which would fall under my regular time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we anticipate that contract is going to go down this year for the rest of this year, and thus will be down next year. But then we anticipated that last time too, and
Right.
it didn't go down as fast as we thought. So.
Now, does the Code Court, do we get reimbursed with that anyway? I mean,
They pay some small court costs, but we're
your
limited.
cost isn't, I mean, we just stand it.
Yeah, we're limited on what those can be by statute. I think
It's not enough to really.
no, it's like $20 or something is all we can charge them.
And that would just go into the general fund income.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the history of the last few years off there, well, it's the second sheet and right after the cover sheet. If you noticed in 22, the actual expenses out of this budget were 223,000. We had only budgeted 162,750 for this year, but my estimate, just based on where we are at this point in the year and what I think is going to come in, is 186. So we're going to go over by about 20,000 this year. We were definitely way over in 22. And then what I increased, I mean, these are my estimates. I didn't talk to Gary about this ahead of time or anything. I was just looking at records, and I put in 176,350 for next year, which is higher than this year's budget, but it's also roughly $10,000 less than what I think we're actually going to spend this year. So I'm just trying to get us to somewhere closer to what I think is going to happen, and your crystal ball's as good as mine on that. So.
I think we need to be cognizant of Gary's time and the cost that it is incurring on his budget when we're utilizing him on specific projects and things that way, so that we're staying on track and on budget going forward.
And I don't know how much other elected officials contact you with things, Gary, but I know I do fairly frequently, and most of them are pretty quick, but we have a lot of it's employment related issues that come up that I need advice on at times.
Or like the tax sales, like that we do. Kevin, do we pay you to do this? Good. And I'm not questioning what you do. I'm just questioning how we can get the number to look a little better to us. I'm not saying you're not doing your job or anything like that, so please don't take it like that. I mean, it's probably really hard trying to keep track of me and not in what I say. So I mean, I'm sure it's a job in its own, but when I think of a contract, I think of like a scope of work, like very specific, drawn out line item work, and then whatever else is beyond that, it's like a change order, and that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. And I'm just trying to figure out if there's a better way that we can add more stuff to the scope of work that would be your.
I'm open to discussing that, Danny. However you guys want. I'm not open to working free.
No, I get that, and I know, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying, I know there's a lot of, you have to.
We decided back in 2017 that this was the best way to do it because the things that were pretty much fixed, we know what kind of time they're going to take, and then everything else we never know.
So do you think is there a way we could do like a, I don't know, add a certain number and price towards that specific item in the scope of work? Or, I mean, for the scope of work, what do you charge? I mean, you're not charged $190 an hour to do all the basic stuff in your contract, are you?
Basically, yeah. I mean, my rate to the clients that come into me is $195 an hour, and that's what I charge for my time. That's all the lawyers got these times. But I'm not billing separately for those basic things. Unless they go over the 10 hours a week, which they rarely do.
How often do you bill us on this, Gary?
I just bill a couple times a year. I usually submit a bill in May or early June and then one in December.
I feel like we should be going to at least quarterly.
I can do that. I used to do it more often, and it seemed like it was less hassle to do it less often, but I can do it however you guys want.
I would just like to see it reflecting in the budget on a more recurring basis so that we kind of have a better grasp of where we're at any given point.
I can do that.
I mean, we have a pretty good grasp on of what we're gonna be dealing with this year, don't we, Gary? And
I
like,
think so. It's, well, in terms of, I mean, you never know. I mean, every one of our potential lawsuits out there, takes some of my time. And sometimes they take a lot of time and sometimes they don't take much time. We've always got anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 of those things pending.
so would it be, I mean, would it be out of the ordinary to ask you to put that into your original scope of work as like an allowance, hour allowance on it to?
Well, that's basically what we've got, Danny. I mean, if it's an hourly allowance, I mean, you just say bill by the hour. I mean, I could rephrase it however you want, but if representing the county in litigation, I can't tell you how many hours it's going to take because you never know. I'm trying to determine if there's anything else on that. Probably the thing that could most easily be converted to a set amount of time on this second list is the codes court. Now that we've got it going smoothly, I could probably make a good guess as to how much time that's going to take on a monthly basis.
And I think we've also been charging, the judge or whoever we pay coach court out of your budget.
Yeah, I think that comes out of my budget.
That's some of what's in there.
Well, I mean, that's the kind of stuff I want to know, or I'd like to know so that the public knows and understands. I mean, that's the whole reason why I'd like to break all the budgets down so that we know exactly what we're being paid for, so that you're not getting beat up over and saying, "Oh, you're making 176 grand." What? Like, that's important to me, I believe, and the decision I make.
Just on your payroll, Gary, like, I mean, on a normal time, I know we've been long lately, but you're usually out of here by noon, right?
Right.
And
So I haven't billed anything for a Monday meeting all this year.
yeah, so I mean, we have 7 hours roughly off of your payroll to use
In addition to that.
in addition to the Monday meeting.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, when I'm the chair, it's my thought to always, I mean, 9 to 5 is what a meeting is. I mean, if we make it to 5, we make it to 5. If not, I mean, I dedicate my entire day. I don't know, I try anyway.
Of course, there's a difference between an elected official and a hired attorney.
Right.
I'm not an elected official.
Right. But I mean, that's the stuff I'd like to see, included into a budget. It's, and I'm not saying there's any other way to do this, Gary, but is there any other do counties do it a different way rather than doing a contract employee, or is that typically how it's done? For the best interest of you, or how, I mean?
Most of the counties that I'm familiar with do not have the attorney just bills for every hour they work. There's that first section's not in there. There are probably some who it's just the opposite. There are, I think maybe Miami County it's just flat salary, but then that's all she does. That attorney doesn't have an outside practice. And so she has a flat salary, covers everything. Except maybe some out-of-pocket expenses. So
Oh, right here, it says be available for phone consultations and questions. So we're not getting charged for each time somebody calls you, like
that's
county?
correct. Unless we get to a point where that's taken more than 10 hours a week. And we haven't done that.
Were you sleeping in a barn, Jason, or what?
I'm not sleeping in the barn, but I'm strolling over to watch showmanship. I got one of my girls getting ready to go into the ring, so I'm trying to keep you on mute so we don't get any feedback from what's going on here.
We're hearing them.
You are?
Yeah.
Gary, do you think we could define your scope of work a little more than what it is in a little more detail, and try to include some of this stuff as a base salary, or no? Or do you think that's pointless?
I mean, we can give it a try if you want. When we did this contract, we hashed this over quite a little bit, and I felt like we pulled out the things that were basically predictable and put them in the base salary. And then anything that was unpredictable, we put in the separate billing. But if you want me to try to revise that some more, I can. I mean, it'll involve changing the salary. You know, if we add more hours to that group, then there'll be more.
So here's where I am on the budgeting side of it. Obviously the budget is an estimate. I'm trying to guess how much of Gary's services we're going to use on the excess part next year. We do have a few things like the Westlaw and the Codes Court where I've got some more definite numbers to work with. But no matter what number we put in this budget, it's going to come down to what we actually do next year on what it costs. So, I mean, I get that you'd like to see something a little more concrete, but I don't know how we do that at this point when we have no idea what kind of lawsuits or issues that are going to come up over the next year.
And that's why I'm thinking that if we're being informed about it a little more often, then we're aware of what we're spending instead of, I guess that's why I'm asking for that, Danny, on those things and trying to keep a better tab on what we're doing.
Let me suggest that we let me bill quarterly or even monthly if you prefer. But let me bill more often for the next year. If you're still unhappy with it, we can renegotiate the whole thing, or maybe by then I'll be ready to retire and you can just get somebody.
Well, let's go this, if you guys are good with it. I mean, let's go off the monthly and let's look at it and just start looking at it and see what we're doing. I mean, maybe we're doing things ourselves that, that's costing us money, but can we go off of you guys good with going off a monthly? Seeing where we're at?
I am.
So you said codes courts, but the county is reimbursed funds for that?
Not much.
Not much, not enough to amount to anything. I mean, we get a little bit of money back, but
There's no way you can put that cost to the taxes or anything, I mean, on the ground or the.
If we do,
Partial.
if we do an abatement on the order of the court, in other words, if the court says, go out and tear this down and remove it, then we could put that on that expense. But
But if it's something they clean up, we're just,
if they clean it up, we just spend our time getting them to clean it up. Now we can fine people, and we do that sometimes,
but it has to be determined by the judge.
but it has to be determined by the judge. And sometimes collecting those fines takes more expense than the fine itself. I mean, now in theory, we had one last time that we told him that he could easily have a $24,000 fine if he didn't get it done, and they got his attention. Because the fine's like so many dollars a day per violation, and he was like a year and a half out of compliance. But the judge is never going to actually fine him that.
Right.
If that's how you guys want to do it, it's,
I think that we move ahead with a monthly plan that way, and try to do a better job of watching over what's going on that way.
Hey, could you put in too, Gary, as far as what you're actually spending on your, I guess, on, in the monthly, just to give us an idea of how many
Yeah.
hours you're spending?
It's broke down in the bill to some extent. It's which hours are for codes court, or which hours are for.
or are you talking about on
On
like the
actual
salary
pay-
part?
The salary part, is what I'm saying. How many hours
Oh.
are spent that month on salary?
On the,
I suppose I can.
Just to give us an idea.
I
of where
have
we're at.
not. I have not kept a detailed timesheet on that, but I will if you want.
Okay.
is there a motion on the table? Did Jason make one, or is he just talking?
No, I can make one. I'd make a motion to tentatively approve the counselor's contract with the idea that we get a monthly statement of the hours worked for the county.
I'll second that motion.
The amount is $176,350 is the proposed budget.
Motion been moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
With that being said, I would like to, on a different subject, and Kevin, I feel like Kevin has put a lot of time and effort into the jail and the project and keeping that thing running consistently and operating and going over and beyond. I believe that, so there was another individual that was involved in it too, and I feel like we gave him a bonus. I believe that we need to do something for Kevin. I know, but
Appreciate it, honor.
how do we reimburse you for your time and effort at the jail?
I'm elected official, that's part of my package. I appreciate it, but that's what I do for the people.
But doing the entire project wasn't part of your package?
Well, it all
the scope of my business. I'm honored, I appreciate that, I'm elected official. I work for the people. Well, we're gonna have enough trouble with budget this year anyway, we'll just be okay.
Okay, so I don't have any more budgets to give you today, but I did have some other discussion on budget I'd like to have with you. If you got a few minutes yet, or if you're ready to move on to something.
Yeah, what you got?
Okay, so due to the revenue neutral requirements, we have to know by July 20th if we plan on exceeding revenue neutral for the year. We have 2 more meetings before then. At this point, I don't even have our audit results back from our new auditors, which is what I use for would be the 22 actual numbers in the budget. I've still got several budgets I need to do for you. We've still got some others that haven't come in yet. I honestly don't know how I'm going to have the whole thing put together enough by then to give you a good estimate on what our mill levy would be. My suggestion at this point would be to let me go ahead and file the notice, which I'm filing it with myself, by July 20th, that we plan on exceeding revenue neutral. That will buy us some more time to fine tune everything. It still does not mean you have to go over the revenue neutral rate. You can cut things down and clear up till the date that the budget's approved. But if I can go ahead and do that, we can squeak out another couple of weeks or so of having some time to work on these and try to get you better estimates on some of these remaining budgets. So I just wanted to know how you guys felt about that.
I'm good with that. I think that
I think it would be prudent.
Any way we could, I'd like to stay revenue neutral, but I know it's probably.
I mean, I have serious doubts that we'll be able to this year anyway, but I really am not at a point where I can give you a good number on where we're at even yet. But yeah, all that takes at this point really doesn't even take any action from you guys right now. There's a form that's at the end of the budget forms where it's a notification to the county clerk. And so all I need to do is go in and I can look at a calendar and come up with a good date to have our budget hearing, and I can put that in and what our proposed rate might be. And my thought on that right now is probably just leave the proposed rate as what this year's rate was, because our revenue neutral is going to drop about $1.5 million from that. But it just gives us the authority to extend our time a little farther. And then if we do need to go over, we're covered. If not, we can still cut it back when we finalize everything.
yeah,
But like I say, I didn't want to do that without talking to you guys about it first.
I'm good with it.
anything else?
That's all I've got.
I'll make a motion we adjourn.
Second it.
I'll second it.
Motion been moved, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys.
We'll see it.
Stop this stuff.